Here.
Senator French.
Here.
Senator Garou.
Here.
Senator Larson.
Here.
Representative Alaman. Representative Angelos.
Here.
Representative Harrelson.
Here.
Representative Pendergraft.
Here.
Representative Sherwood.
Here.
Representative Smith.
Here.
Co-Chairman Bear.
Here.
Mr. Chairman Salazar.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Chief Justice, it's great to have you here. Looking forward to hearing your comments. And Mr. Co-Chair, do you have any comments before we start the day's business?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Well, I just really look forward to hearing what you have to present for us today and getting into the details. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Salazar, Co-Chairman Bear, members of the Joint Appropriations Committee. Good morning. As you know, I'm Lynn Boomgarden. I'm the Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court and also appearing today as the Chairman of the Wyoming Judicial Council. With me at the table this morning is our Judicial Branch Administrator, Elisa Butler, and her Deputy and Chief Fiscal Officer, Claire Smith, is sitting just behind, and we're sorry to report that Claire's trying to get over a cold and decided maybe it'd be better to sit back and will come forward as needed today. Both Elisa and Claire are exceptional leaders. They guide our Administrative Office of Courts in supporting all judges, justices, and court staff. They have a combined 20 years of state budget experience and will take the lead here in a few minutes, walking the committee through the details of our judicial branch budget. Also with us in the audience are District Court Judge Danessa Snyder from Rollins and Circuit Court Judge Sean Chambers from Cheyenne. Judge Snyder, Judge Chambers, and I constitute the Executive Committee of the Wyoming Judicial Council. And the Judicial Council is the representative governing body of our Wyoming Judicial Branch. It's comprised of 3 circuit court judges, 3 district court judges, and 3 Supreme Court justices. The council is responsible for updating and implementing the Wyoming Judicial Branch Strategic Plan, and we've provided that as a handout to you this morning. Consistent with that plan, I want you to know that the council has reviewed, prioritized, and approved each of the exception requests that we'll present to you today. And it's our collective privilege to be here this morning and to answer any questions that you may have. Working each day to keep 72 courtrooms functioning and open to every Wyoming citizen across 9 judicial districts in all 23 counties are 340 judges, justices, and state employees. In fiscal year 2025, those individuals handled nearly 120,000 new cases. Notably, only about 3% of the state's general fund budget is needed each biennium to fund these essential justice services to all of your constituents. Our general fund exception requests for biennial fiscal years 2026 to 2028 are modest, approximately $5.5 million. As we will explain, our requests reflect the actual costs of doing business in a digitized court and modern courtroom. They represent needs, not wants. And not surprisingly, most of our requests relate to the increasing cost of technology. Let me give you just a few examples of how technology supports court operations. And I'll tell you that I asked Judge Snyder and Judge Chambers to poll their respective conferences to get real-life examples of how technology is necessary to the functioning of their courtroom. I'm giving you just a sample. We have a handout if you'd like it at any point in time that can give you all of those polled results. But by appearing remotely in appropriate proceedings, our public defenders across the state can reduce travel time and cost and cover cases across a greater geographic area. And we're seeing how this is being utilized, particularly where we have the greatest public defender shortage right now in Campbell County. It's not solving the problem, but the problem would be a lot worse if we couldn't have these public defenders appear remotely in appropriate proceedings. Remote appearances also allow not just public defenders, but our county attorneys and the Attorney General's office to appear in multiple court locations across the state in the same day, again, saving the state costs. When parties and witnesses can participate and testify remotely, the court can schedule more efficiently. And when it does that, litigation costs are reduced. Remote appearances are also helping to mitigate what is not just a statewide, but a nationwide shortage of court reporters. And so remote proceedings allow better usage of our existing court reporters. One of the key things, and I just had a conversation with Judge Dara, Circuit Court Judge up in Park County yesterday, and he was telling me about this. He does all of his arraignments in criminal proceedings remotely. So it was Monday morning. He said he had a jail full of people that found themselves contrary to the law over the long holiday weekend. And he was going to spend about an hour and a half having each of those defendants appear remotely. It allows him to do that more efficiently so he can manage his docket better. But the other thing that it allows is he doesn't need sheriff's staff to bring them over each time, each defendant, to the courtroom. Because it saves staff time, it saves money, because it keeps those individuals in the jail until their arraignment is over. It also improves court security, both for the law enforcement as well as the judge or anyone else that might be in the courtroom. That remote capability also, when you go to trial or various hearings, it allows the victims to not have to be in the same location or same room as the defendant. And that's an important factor for victim protection and victim rights. Our courtroom AV systems integrate with hearing assist devices that are so prevalent now. So AV also improves accessibility to the hearing impaired and others with disabilities. Courtroom technology also facilitates broad interpretive services necessary for non-English speakers. And non-English speakers that are in the court as defendants or litigants or witnesses have due process rights that we have to be able to allow them to communicate and allow a jury or judge to understand what their testimony is. And then finally, self-represented litigants, and there are more and more of those all the time, and Judge Chambers and our circuit court judges probably face the greatest number of self-represented litigants on a daily basis. They come in, they know what they want, but they don't know how to present it to the court. And through our court technology, they can access forms and samples, educational resources in real time. And that helps our judges. Our judges are always in a tough situation with self-represented litigants because they can't advocate. They're there to manage their courtroom, but they can't let things get too bogged down either. They need to keep things moving along, and technology is pretty essential in the court's work with those self-represented litigants. So let me tell you now which of our technology costs come under our general fund budget and which come under a special revenue account. The general fund pays for certain technology costs like our cybersecurity infrastructure, cloud storage, internet access, email, and all of our software licensing. As you can imagine, those are the technologies that form the foundation of our judicial business operations. And if those costs aren't met, data security and citizen access will be compromised. Courts will slow down and justice will be delayed. Other technology costs are computers, enterprise software applications, and the courtroom AV equipment. Those are paid with money from the Judicial Systems Automation, or JSA account. And I'm sure you can all appreciate, because this is the world we live in, our devices and equipment has to reliably function and occasionally it needs to be replaced. Technology moves probably faster than any of us would care, but we aren't in control of that, and the branch isn't in control of that. And as we move to a paperless environment, any interruption in our docket management and e-filing platforms can halt court operations altogether. In addition, and I really want to stress this, if we can't maintain a fully functioning docket management and e-filing platform on an ongoing basis in all of our courts, any hope that we have of providing citizens statewide access, remote access to court documents will be lost. We've got to keep all of those up and running in order to have the data in the system and the access to that data. Now, the legislature established the JSA account in 2000 as a special revenue account. And the account is funded with filing fees that are paid by court users who benefit from the very technology that I just described. Unfortunately, since its inception, the JSA account has become a bit of a spillover account, and it's because it's being used to fund IT personnel. And because of that, it's drifted from its original purpose, which was to support continued courtroom technology and judicial branch automation. And expenditures continue to exceed revenue. We've known that for the last couple of budget sessions, and we've advised this committee that the JSA account will likely be insolvent by fiscal year 2029. Because we haven't had any long-term solution, we've been belt-tightening and applying Band-Aids, replacing equipment only when it breaks at the cost of delay in substandard judicial operations in some cases, changing priorities and how that money is spent when there's a crisis. And I could give you particular examples of that if you would like, but we've been doing our best to make that money last as long as it can. But as we'll show you this morning, if that imminent funding crisis continues to be kicked down the road, our daily branch operations are at substantial risk. They're at risk now, and that risk will only elevate. So citizens and lawyers who need remote access will be substantially and seriously inconvenienced, and public transparency will be reduced. Band-Aids can only go so far. As Elisa will fully explain, we propose a two-part solution to ensure JSA account sustainability for at least 10 to 15 years. First, we propose to realign the JSA expenditures with the original purpose of that account. And to accomplish that, we propose moving the appellate court docket management subscription costs from the general fund to the JSA account. And Elisa will explain that was intended to be a one-time expenditure that was funded by this body through a general fund appropriation. But what has happened, as I'm sure you've heard from other agencies, is these technology companies are moving from a one-time we'll build you your program, your platform, to a we'll build it, but you have to subscribe to it if you want to have it continually updated. And that's what's happened with our appellate court docket management system. Because that's now a subscription cost, we propose it better is served by the purpose of the JSA account. Now that will increase the expenditures out of the JSA account, but that increase would be more than offset if we can move the 13 FTAs that are IT positions that are currently funded by the JSA account into the general fund where we believe salaries and benefits more appropriately belong. The second part of the solution to allow at least 10 to 15 years sustainability of that JSA account is to improve the revenue stream into that account. And to that end, we've prepared a bill draft that would increase the filing fees that provide the revenue stream for that account by $20. Those fees were last increased in 2020, but we've we've done research. We can't find another state that charges a sort of a similar fee, that funds a similar account. So we can't compare apples and apples. But what we have been able to do is compare total civil and criminal fees imposed in surrounding states. And looking at those total figures, even with the $20 increase to the JSA filing fee, Wyoming's fees would still be at the low end of the fees charged in courts in our surrounding states. And here's, I think, the real kicker that might distinguish these JSA fees from other fees that you're going to deal with during your JAC hearings. Each year, 50% of those JSA filing fees are paid by out-of-state drivers who are cited for Wyoming traffic violations. So half of that money comes from non-residents who are cited by Highway Patrol, County Sheriff. And here's the other thing is, I think that fit or that synergy is good because those are the very people who then benefit from being able to remotely appear. And what the judges tell me is, instead of just having an outstanding warrant that they hope they will never cross through Wyoming and will be served on them, if they can appear remotely and not have to come back to Wyoming to appear in court, they tend to do that, and then we collect more of those fees. So it's a good synergy with regard to the amount of revenue that we are able to ultimately assess and collect from those out-of-state drivers. Those are the two parts that really form the basis of our exception request. At this point, I would be glad to answer any general questions that you might have, and I'm going to welcome Elisa and Claire as needed to fill in the details. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So thank you, Chief Justice. Are there any questions? Any questions? Yes, Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I should have done this before. How do you want me to address you? I'm not sure, Chief, or I want to make sure I do it right.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, Chief Justice Lynn, I'm not too picky. I'm a Wyoming girl.
Okay. Well, good morning, Chief Justice. I wanted to just ask, you mentioned it, and something we've talked about your predecessors, and then we've talked over the years about people that self-represent and how that bogs down the system. How, we've talked about over the years several different ways to try to address it. Court navigators, someone to help navigate, because as you said, the judges don't have time, nor is it their job to be the advocates for, which is what the self-representing clients seem to want most of the time. How's that working? Is it still as big a problem as it's been, or are you addressing it, or is just each court addressing it in a different way? Kind of fill in the blanks for me a little bit if you could. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Guru, we are addressing it. We could address it more robustly if we had more resources. We have been able to use the resources we have to expand that court navigator program. It started in Natrona County. We had judges and clerks in that county and some space in that county courtroom to be able to initiate the in-person navigator with a good volunteer force, many of whom are through the paralegal program at Casper College. They also are available to address online requests to a certain degree, to the extent that they have capacity. Uinta County stepped up and they said, hey, we've got some capacity in need here. So that navigator program was expanded into Uinta County. Victor Payne is in our Administrative Office of Court Services Division and oversees this. He put together for our Wyoming Judicial Council's consideration a survey instrument that we sent out to the District Court Conference and the Circuit Court Conference to ask what is the need. on an individual judicial district basis. We got those responses, we scored those responses. It allowed us to see a pretty clear delineation of the next 3 or 4 courts that were in the most need and had the resources, the volunteer resources, the space, et cetera, to be able to help us expand that. Sweetwater, or I'm trying to think of which counties. Lincoln, thank you. Lincoln County, Albany County, and I think Sweetwater were maybe the first 3 on that list. I can get that. I don't recall specifically what those were. We took that to the Judicial Council in September at its quarterly meeting, and they approved that sequence of expansion. So as we are able to stand those up, we are expanding the program. I think that that's testament to the fact that the program has benefit and is efficient. And it makes sense that we do it where there's the greatest need and we have the greatest amount of support from, those not just volunteers, but those judges and clerks that need to help manage that. So we are continuing to work forward with that, continuing as we open new sites where these navigators are available. That also expands our remote capacity because we have more people that can address the remote queries and problems that come in. And we're gathering data. It's not been out there long enough that I have a lot of great data to show you, so it's mostly anecdotal and, the desire and interest in expansion that I've explained. Our Equal Justice Wyoming, continues to complement that. We have, I believe, 5 or 6 places in the state that do the reference attorney where they go to the courthouse, local attorneys go to the courthouse once or twice a month, depending on the community, and are available to help self-represented litigants. We have Online Legal Answers, another program that is administered by Equal Justice Wyoming. So I guess to wrap up, we're doing the best we can with the resources that we have, and we're also preparing with Legal Aid of Wyoming and resources that they have from Legal Services Corporation to do another legal needs assessment. Ours is about 5 years old right now. When we get that done in the coming biennium, I think we can better assess, has the amount of need decreased? Has the type of need changed? We'll reassess that. But nationally, I can tell you that it continues to be a growing problem. And it's not just those who are economically disadvantaged. And AI is going to play into this as well. And I don't think we even all can fully appreciate the scale of how many folks are going to believe they can just plug something into ChatGPT and they don't need a lawyer anymore and are going to appear before the court. So that sort of traditional need of those who are economically disadvantaged and couldn't afford an attorney that was sort of creeping into middle class and small business ranks because of the cost of legal services. We now have that additional layer of AI. And I hope I've answered your question.
Senator Grew, go ahead.
Yeah, just follow up, yeah, because it's, for us, it's a kind of an interesting conundrum because you have the right to do that, and you're absolutely right. This is not necessarily just poor and indigent people now. It's becoming a little wider scope. And so for us, the question is, how much do we help in that when that's what they're making a choice? And so where's that balance, I guess? And that's kind of, and I appreciate your comments. I just had one other one too, and I really appreciate the talk about remote, appearances for especially on arraignment and all that. And the cost and safety and all that, do you get any pushback from defense attorneys on that? Do you see that from sometimes litigants saying, I want to appear that way? Do you get that? Do you see that at all? Or is it just all part of the new technology, like us zooming into meetings now? That used to be kind of abnormal, now it's part of the deal. So just wondering.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, if I understand your question is, are you asking, do defendants push back at being asked to appear remotely? Not that I am aware of. I do think judges take each case as it stands, and, they have the best knowledge and autonomy in their courtroom when it's appropriate or when it's not appropriate. But I would also say the statutes and rules govern. So there are certain critical proceedings that the law mandates that the defendant be present in the courtroom, and we're not encroaching on that. It's more things like arraignments and the pretrial proceedings where that's not required.
So, Madam Chief Justice, let's talk about the requested fee increases. If they don't succeed, what are your contingencies? I assume that you would come back in the supplemental if it didn't get passed through the two chambers. Can you talk to me about what your plans are?
We would continue to belt tighten and prioritize our expenditures as we can, but we are to the point where we cannot do that without having disruption of court operations in our courtrooms. And so we would come back in the supplemental, ask again. That's part of the reason we presented a two-part. The Judicial Council was not interested in providing this committee or the legislature alternatives. We looked hard at how can we get this sustainable for 10 to 15 years. There's one way we can do it. We can do it in part without a fee increase. So to say just no fee increase, it kind of depends on what you would do with that second part of moving positions into the general fund and moving our Supreme Court docket management into the JSA account. But let me give you an example. We were operating with Microsoft Surface Hubs. They look like a big TV on a stand, and that was the mechanism through which connected to the internet and remote appearances were made. We had first-generation Surface Hubs and we had second-generation Surface Hubs. Within the period of a month maybe, or 6 weeks, nearly all the first generation failed. My dad used to call it planned obsolescence. And we're scrambling because we then have courts with no remote capability. So we are begging and borrowing second-generation Surface Hubs from jury rooms, from conference rooms, anywhere where maybe there was an extra one, just to keep that remote capacity in each one of our courtrooms. Then we find out from Microsoft that those all need an update by the middle of this past October to continue to function and be serviceable. So we have to move time and attention and personnel resources to address that, to keep all of the Generation 2 up and running. And then we learn that March 27, is that?
End of 27.
The end of 2027, they'll no longer service those Generation 2 Surface Hubs. And so what that is requiring us to do is reprioritize and accelerate updating AV in our courtrooms to have a different kind of technology, cameras like you have in this room, and that kind of accessibility. Those are things that are beyond our control. And if we're going to have, we either won't have remote capability if we don't have the resources to be able to get those hubs replaced in the courtrooms in a timely manner, or something else is going to give. And we don't have, our cybersecurity. I can give you another example. We had a piece of equipment fail in a courtroom just a couple of weeks ago. And this was a situation where the trial judge had said this particular case and proceeding isn't appropriate to stream to the public, and had done everything necessary on the panel to turn off the streaming. And because of an equipment failure, because it was some of the earlier equipment, some of our old equipment, that streaming occurred anyway. And as a result of that, now we're doing a risk analysis, stopping streaming, because there are some things that are completely inappropriate. They're confidential matters, juvenile matters, and that, until we can assess what that risk is and where that equipment is, and then decide what our priority is. Is it allowing streaming, or is it, and that's the public access piece that I mentioned. If we can't stream because we can't trust our equipment, then we can't stream.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Chief Justice. My question is actually very similar to Senator Giroux's, but maybe the other side of the coin. Having done this type of committee meeting both in person and remotely, there's an entirely different feel. And there is a lack of touch, I guess. You can almost sometimes feel different things that you can't do remotely. Have you gotten any negative feedback? You've told us a lot about the positive feedback from your judges, from the rest of your department. And also, I'm assuming that a judge always has the option whether to do this remotely or whether this is one that I need to be there. So any negative feedback from your people?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft. No, I'm not getting negative feedback, and the reason being what you just touched on. The trial judges are in the best position to know what is appropriate for a remote proceeding and what isn't appropriate. And they have different preferences, and their preferences are honored unless it became a situation, I suppose, where somebody, refused altogether, or maybe didn't allow an out-of-state driver, to appear remotely, something that maybe was more obvious. It is to their discretion when and how they allow remote appearances.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Again, welcome, Chief Justice. I'd like to go back to the JSA account and your ideas on fees. I've been contemplating this myself, but the first thing I wanted to ask, are judges capable of waiving these fees should there be a situation where they feel it's necessary, these and other fees, for instance? I'll start with that question.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman, I'm probably not the best suited to answer that. There are opportunities where somebody, petitions to be able to appear what we call in forma pauperis. They don't have the necessary resources to be able to file an appeal, for example, and those can be granted. To my knowledge, it is mostly in criminal cases where there's no ability to pay, but not all criminal cases. And I would be happy to ask Judges Chambers or Snyder to address your question more specifically on the circumstances and frequency of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll want to get the details from them when they come forward. Appreciate that. And when I look at this situation is new to me as I read your request, and I know you're new in this position as well, so we're kind of crossing a new bridge, if you will. But I'm curious, and maybe your staff can let us know, has JAC been notified in the past of this concern, or when did it become obvious to your staff that, hey, this is not going to continue working this way? That's really what I'd like to know. How long have we known we've got a problem, and how long have we started working on it? Because this is the first I've heard of it as I read your request. And I heard you pretty clearly, 2029 is that's when we're really in a mess. When I think of the, I'll let you answer that question in a moment, but when I think of the fee situation, I do think it's the right way to solve the problem. Not sure I agree with moving the employees out of that area. Maybe we just need to have a discussion amongst this committee. What is the purpose of that fund, and should it do it? But when I think of the fee increases, I think of the people who are going to benefit the most from this technology. And it's really the attorneys, because they're going to become more efficient being able to use this technology as they interact with the court. And then they will probably pass those costs on to their customers, but they will be able to be more profitable based on this technology. So I'm kind of looking at it as, you know, when we increase these fees, we probably need to look very carefully at, you know, what is the average hourly wages of attorneys, what are their billing rates, things like that, and how does our fee structure compare to that? I appreciate what you said, that we're in the lowest tier as far as fees at this point, and would remain so with your suggested fee increase, but how do we compare to those attorneys' fees in those same states that we're comparing ourselves to? And that kind of data would be helpful. Back to the JSA account, you know, would love to see from your staff what kind of trajectory you've seen, you know, what kind of charts you've put together on this account. That would be helpful for us as a committee to be able to look at that as we make decisions on how to proceed with your suggestions. But I'll let you go ahead and answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Co-Chairman, I believe your first question was, how long have we known of the JSA problem? Elisa probably has a little better insight than I do. I'm familiar with at least the last session where I went and spoke with certain legislators and know that it was brought up then. How long before, when, for example, you know, positions were moved into or added and then funded by the JSA, I don't have that institutional knowledge at hand. And maybe while we're on that question, Elisa, would you have any more insight for when we first raised this issue?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, my name is Elisa Butler. I'm the State Court Administrator for the Wyoming Judicial Branch. So we first started having discussions with JAC 2 or 3 budget sessions ago, and that, when we originally started having those discussions, one of the requests that we made during that time, and this was before I was a state court administrator, we actually made a similar request to move the positions that we have in that JSA account into the general fund. The Joint Appropriations Committee did not recommend that to the full body, and so that exception request was not approved. So it has been a discussion point for a number of years. I know we talked about it during the last budget session when I presented, and just to give this committee, again, another heads up that we're getting close. And then last year during session, we actually had a similar bill draft to increase the JSA fee, and that bill did not pass. That came out of the Joint Judiciary Committee. It was a sponsored bill out of JJC, and the fee that bill failed during session. So it has been a topic of conversation for quite some time.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman, if I would add that we do have charts and balances and things, and Elisa will get to that, and when she gets to that particular exception request, if you don't mind deferring that, we can get more specific on that. And then I heard your request that we look into how these fees are passed along by attorneys and what that will look like, and we'll be happy to work with the bar to get you some more information on that. What I can tell you with confidence today is that it would just be a small segment, and it primarily would be, and I think you'll be able to pinpoint this when we provide the detailed information. The civil litigation, the automobile crashes, the contract disputes, those kinds of things, that would be just a very modest piece of the pie of all of the cases under which. So Chancery Court, civil litigation in our district courts, potentially some civil in our circuit courts, although that's landlord, tenant, small claims, often self-represented litigants. So that the fee would be there, but it wouldn't be a function of the attorney's billable rate or pass-through. All the criminal dockets in all of our cases, unless there's a private defender hired for that criminal defendant, these would be fees that would come through the public defender office and then would benefit them by virtue of them being able to appear remotely, appear in a broader geographical area. So, and then it also I appreciate your point that it benefits attorneys in their filing and presentation of their cases in civil matters, but I wouldn't want you to overlook the benefit to the litigants themselves and the witnesses in how their case can be presented and how they can appear, and if it's more convenient for them to be able to appear remotely or have their matter heard more quickly because of that technology.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I agree that the litigants will be the ultimate beneficiary of this. I just think that the financial side of it, it's going to basically be a pass-through. It's going to be part of the overall bill that they get to pay for the opportunity to use the court system. So the reason I ask those questions in regards to attorney's fees is because if we were to authorize a fee increase, I would envision a better idea being something where we tie it to something in the economy so that we're not coming back here every few years saying we need to do another fee increase, it's just not working. Where the judiciary branch would have the opportunity to work within a range, if you will. And as the economy changes, as inflation increases, that these fees would be self-adjusting, if you will, within a range. And then the judiciary could look at how it's performing, both in funding the fund as well as the overall results in the judiciary for the litigants, and make those decisions on a more timely basis, if you will. That's my vision if we were to do this. But again, I mentioned that I think that the personnel for IT probably belongs in this fund, from my opinion as well. I understand your thoughts that wasn't originally that way. You'd like to move them out of that fund because it would make the fund more solvent right away. But I'd like to find a long-term solution so that, if more IT is necessary, or if AI takes over and less IT is necessary, you can adjust up or down in those regards. So there's my thoughts. Wouldn't you agree?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, we would be happy to, try to help gather whatever information would be helpful as you explore trying to tie it to an economic or inflationary factor. So please just let us know as your discussion progresses. And would you like Judge Snyder and/or Judge Chambers to address your fee waiver question?
I would, if that's all right with the chairman.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman. My name is Donessa Snyder. I'm the district judge in Carpenter County out of Rawlins. Fees, that's a great question. In criminal cases, those are only going to be assessed if somebody is convicted in court. Prosecutor doesn't have to file a filing fee when they file a case, or more commonly, as the chief mentioned, is forfeitures on traffic violations. Civil cases, I get a lot of fee waiver requests, particularly in divorce actions. And what goes along with those fee waiver requests is a financial affidavit, which is sealed, but basically lays out that they can't pay the filing fee. And the judge looks at that on a case-by-case basis. Typically, those are waived because people have a right to get divorced. And so typically we do see those. Another place I particularly see them a lot is being in Rollins. I get a lot of inmate litigation and a lot of requests from inmates on a variety of cases for a waiver of filing fees. And I really look at what they're filing the case about. And so those are all across the board, and again, take them on a case-by-case basis. It is such a small amount in civil litigation when you're talking about medical malpractice or contract dispute. But on our day-to-day items like divorces, custody hearings, we do see them frequently, and judges frequently do grant those. And so we have that mechanism. And then the third category are on appeals. And typically where we see them are on criminal appeals. And again, they fill out a financial affidavit. As long as they meet the criteria of indigency, then we issue a waiver of the filing fee.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Judge Schneider, thank you for being here and answering those questions. I really appreciate what you were saying there. And what I heard you say was that if a inmate files, then you make a judgment call. If they're just being deleterious and creating all kinds of problems for the judicial system, that you can make a call and say, no, we're not going to waive those fees because you're causing more trouble than you're trying to really address a legal issue. Is that an accurate assessment of what you just said?
Mr. Chairman, there are certain categories, if it's a civil rights dispute, certainly we want to get to the meat of that. But if they're unhappy because they were assigned the top bunk, then that might be something I look at a little closer.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. I hope you understand why it is that we're asking the question. I think that what you're doing already with the indigent situation or the inability to pay is important. As we contemplate an increase in fees, I consider that a tax increase, and we certainly want to make sure that we're not creating a bigger problem. And it looks like the judges have the ability to address that if it were creating a problem there. And so that helps me as I decide whether I would support increasing those fees. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Questions? What is the fee scale actually presently? And then number two, what would be if we were to decide to consider a bill draft, what would be the revenue generated if that succeeded?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, can you repeat the first question on that?
Yeah, what is the current fee schedule? What is the current fees that you're seeking to increase? And secondly, if this committee were to consider such a bill draft, what is the projected revenue that you would see?
Mr. Chairman, to your first question, it varies a little bit. The JSA fee varies just a bit across different jurisdictions. So I would say like Chancery Court, it's higher. I believe it's $100 in Chancery Court. For the vast majority of cases that the courts hear where that fee is going to be assessed is $40. And so, if we were looking at a $20 increase, I think Claire has those numbers. So, I have those numbers now, Mr. Chairman. So every $5 increase is approximately $900,000 in revenue.
Okay, so what would be the total amount then?
Mr. Chairman.
You're talking about a $20 increase?
$20.
So something short of 4 million.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for being here. So in 2020, we did that increase, and sitting on judiciary for a couple of years, this has been a conversation that keeps coming up, just for a little bit of a as we sit there and go, hey, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, virtual wasn't a thing, but now it is. And so, but in 2020, that fee increase that you guys did, I don't remember, and I should, but I don't remember what that increase was at that time.
Mr. Chairman, I believe, Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, I believe it was a $10 increase, but I will verify that and let you know. Mr. Chairman, I think that's correct.
Who else? Any other questions? Okay. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, Lisa's prepared to go through the budget book in the level of detail that you prefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just step back a little bit and give you a high-level overview of our budget. And then, depending on how you would like to proceed, I'm happy to walk through the budget book page by page, or we can focus on the exception requests.
Yeah, we've spent days reading, and I think we have a general idea. So if you could just give us an overview, and then I'll save time for any questions specifically.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd be happy to do that. So the Wyoming Judicial Branch is made up of a number of courts, which may surprise you. We have a Supreme Court. There are 5 justices at the Supreme Court, 1 Chief Justice, who you have met today, who acts as the administrative head of the Wyoming Judicial Branch. We have 23 district courts throughout the state, 1 in each county, and we have 27 district court judges throughout the state. We have 1 Chancery Court now and 1 seated Chancery Court judge. That judge was just seated earlier this year in January 2025. We have 27 circuit courts throughout the state, so 1 in each county, and there are a few counties that have multiple courts, and we have 24 circuit court judges. Now, all of those courts are governed by the Wyoming Judicial Council, which makes policy and administrative decisions for the entire branch, and you heard the chief speak about the council in her opening remarks. Moving on to the Wyoming Judicial Branch budget structure, we have 29 agencies within our budget. So the Supreme Court agency encompasses most of the judicial branch budget. It encompasses the Supreme Court, Chancery Court, circuit courts. Also, that's where the administrative office of the courts lives. That unit lives in the Supreme Court agency. Also, we have a few other units that live within that Supreme Court agency. We also have 27 district court agencies. And so each district court judge is their own agency in the state. So they are independent from the Supreme Court, and they are independent from each other in terms of their fiscal budgets. And so when you look through the district court section of our budget book, you will see that each district court judge has signed a little piece of paper that approves their budget. We also have the Board of Law Examiners as an agency under the Wyoming Judicial Branch budget. The Wyoming Board of Law Examiners is administered by the Wyoming State Bar, and that agency generally provides administrative support or the administration of passing the bar. So to become an attorney and practice in Wyoming, that's what that Board of Law Examiners assists with doing. So that's a high-level structure of our budget. And Mr. Chairman, if I could beg your indulgence for just a moment, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Claire Smith for putting this all together. She wears a lot of hats in our office. She's not only our chief fiscal officer, but she's my deputy. So she spends a lot of time working on these things and does an incredible job. So, Mr. Chairman, unless there are any questions about that high-level overview, I'll go ahead and just move right into our exception requests. So if you turn to, it's Romanet 5 in your budget book, you will find a summary of our exception requests. These requests really do, as Chief Justice Boomgard mentioned, they really do represent the needs of the branch to continue to operate in a modern world. What you'll find at the top of that page is a yellow box. Those are general fund requests. So those requests have an impact on the general fund. And we'll talk through each one of those. Below that, you will see a dark blue colored box. Those are what we call other branch requests. Those ones will have no impact on the general fund. And so between those two boxes, we have a total general fund and other branch requests of just over $6 million during this budget session. And Mr. Chairman, I will probably come back to this page, this Romanet 5, as we work through the exception requests. And I'm going to hold off on going in priority order because not all of these are technology requests. We have a few requests that are small and not related to technology. We'll come back to all of the technology requests at the end, if that's okay. All right, so Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna start, if you look in the blue box, you will see under the equipment replacement, you'll see a request of transfer of positions. Nope, not that one, organizational realignment. So we're gonna move on to SC5. On SC5, what you'll see, this is the under the Supreme Court Agency and the Administrative Office of the Courts unit. So this is 0101. This is a net to zero request. We aren't asking for any more positions and we are not requesting any more money. What this request is to essentially just move positions from different units within that Supreme Court agency to where they appropriately belong. We have a very small staff and we have to be nimble and move with the priorities of the branch and with the priorities of the state. And so over time, what has happened is some of those positions have lived in different units in the Supreme Court budget, but they're doing work that really provides branch-wide resources to, branch-wide services to all of the courts throughout the state. And for that reason, it makes sense for those positions to be transferred into the Administrative Office of the Courts unit. So you will see the exception request is on page SC5. Unfortunately, it says it's a priority 2 exception request. It is not, because it's a net to zero. We took it out of our priority order. It's just an organizational realignment to ensure that those positions are paid out of the correct units. So please ignore that priority 2 label at the top. Mr. Chairman, there are 2 places which these positions would be transferred from in our other units. One is Division 0400, which is the library, state law library unit or division. And we would transfer a part-time position out of the library and into the Administrative Office of the Courts. And then in Division 0500, which is our circuit courts, we have a total of 4 positions, I believe, that would come out of 5 positions that would come out of the circuit courts into the Administrative Office of the Courts. So, Mr. Chairman, again, this is a net to zero request, just a realignment of positions to ensure that we are paying them out of the appropriate division and unit.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So we will move on. So this is priority number 7. It's on SC 28 of our budget book. And this is in unit 0503 in the Circuit Courts Division. And so this request on SC 28 is for a number of copiers that we need throughout the state. So we still use paper in the state and in our courts. We try to get as much life out of those copiers as we can, but we have a number of them that we need to replace this year. This is priority number 7 on our priority list. This is a one-time exception request, and it would affect the general fund. So we are requesting $83,500 for those copiers. What you will find in this on SC 28 is there are actually some district court copiers that also need replaced. We have just asked for those requests or that money to live in this unit so we can appropriately allocate it. And it's a little less of an administrative burden than putting those all in separate budgets. And it allows us to kind of, if we get a copier for less and a copier for more, it allows us to kind of have some flexibility when we make those purchases. So, Mr. Chairman, the total standard and exception budget request for this unit would be $135,310.
Yes, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking at it, and again, I'm going to keep asking those dumb questions, but when we're looking at First Judicial District, Cheyenne 2010, so obviously that's a 15-year-old copier is what I'm gathering. And we're seeing a 2020, so that's a 5-year-old copier. Are we deciding replacement on number of copies that have ran through that machine, or are we deciding replacement on the one we bought in 2020 didn't last as long as we had hoped, or how are we kind of deciding? Obviously, we don't want to run to failure like you guys had on some of your other technology. You guys are like, hey, we're scrambling. We don't want to get to that point, but there's a 10-year gap there, and that's substantial. So can you kind of explain or talk about that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, I can tell you, I don't know specifically, but I can tell you, we generally look at the copiers each year, and we try to hit like a 7-year cycle if we can. In some instances, and I would imagine that's what happened in Laramie, is that they just don't last that long. So I think, lessons learned, if that one doesn't last as long as some others, we probably need to reevaluate the kind of copier we're buying and look at getting the one that was in the Cheyenne court for 15 years. So I think that's what I would anticipate. But Mr. Chairman, I can get you a firm answer on that.
Follow-up? Okay.
Thank you, and just, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just, you alluded to the fact we're trying kind of a 7-year cycle, which is, pretty much from what I've seen through doing this and others, 10 years is about a lifespan of one of these machines. So the fact we got 15 is awesome, but at the same time, you're also sitting there going, is that gonna die tomorrow? And we don't wanna play that game. So do we have an actual cycle out, or is it just we try to hit it? And is that something that we're trying to make where we have a definite, once they hit this many prints or this amount of time? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, I think Claire Smith can probably give you a better answer, but I think what we're doing generally is we look at these about every year, and we identify which ones have been out there for a period of time, and then we evaluate whether or not we need to ask for some money to replace that copier.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Claire Smith. I'm the Deputy Administrator and Chief Fiscal Officer. Representative Harrelson, everything that Ms. Butler said is correct, but when I look at what I want to ask for in this request, I look at the age of all the copiers and find the oldest. And then I talk to the court to see if that particular one, if they're having any problems with it, or do they think that they really can last longer, then we won't necessarily request a replacement at that time. And actually, I think probably Cheyenne is a mistake. I think it might have been 2020.
With your indulgence, I saw Senator Larson, and we'll go to Representative Pendergraft.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I had lunch with the vendor that got the bid, I think, for a 5-year bid on the copier statewide. and maybe Mr. Hibbard could help me with this if I'm saying it wrong, but I think every 5 years, they go ahead and bid out on all the copiers statewide. I'm guessing that the court system is not part of that, but I question why it isn't. And if it's working with all the other agencies, why aren't we doing it that way?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, we use the same vendor, but we are purchasing our copiers instead of leasing them so that we can keep them longer.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think he was touching on what I was talking about. Actually, I used to sell copiers, and in a lot of large corporations, they found it more beneficial to just to lease them, especially when you have a different variety of, this particular office burns a gob of copies, and this one does 7. Have we looked at that recently? Is that an option for any of these?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, yes, we do look at that each time we're purchasing one to see if it makes more sense to lease them. And we've just found that it's overall less expensive to purchase one because we can keep it longer. But that is always a question we are asking.
Anyone else? Yes, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. I might talk a little more about this, I guess. So when you have them need to be serviced, I'm guessing that might cost more. I don't know. Maybe you can tell us about that.
When we need a service, it isn't any more than what the executive branch is doing with their leases. That is something that each time we've bought one, we have talked to the vendor that the state has contracted with and made sure that in the long run, we're not going to have excess charges. So throughout the branch, the number of instances we've had for maintenance has been pretty low.
Anyone else? Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, so I'm going to move into our technology requests because those are the bulk of what we have to talk about today. So I will have you all flip to SC 52. Actually, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, SC 51. So this, again, we're going to talk about 2 different units within the Supreme Court agency, and both of those units live within the Court Technology Division, which is 0600. So Court Technology, as you heard Chief Justice Baumgarten talk about in her opening remarks, that these 2 budgets that we will talk about, units that we will talk about, pay for the technology for the entire branch. As we mentioned, they're vital to continued operations and to basically maintain relevance in the modern world. There are 2 units within this division. The first one is 0601. That is the general fund unit. So that is the unit that is generally funded. And then we have 0610, and that is the special revenue account or the JSA account, as you've heard about today. So moving into SC 52, Unit 0601, which is the general fund account, as the chief mentioned, we use this to pay for basically all of the infrastructure that operates the court technology. So when you think of Microsoft services, cloud services, data, internet, cybersecurity, email, all of those things that you really don't think about very much, but make the technology run, that is all what we try to fund out of this general fund account. So moving into our priority request or our exception requests, Mr. Chairman, on SC 52, you will find our priority 1 exception request. This is a general fund request, and it would be it is an ongoing request, and that is for our Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. So the Wyoming Judicial Branch is a Microsoft shop. We run all of our, we run everything off of Microsoft. So from email to cloud services to cybersecurity, all of those things run a portion of Microsoft. We have seen over time that Microsoft Enterprise Agreement grow. And I'm sure we're not the only ones that you will hear from as you go through these hearings that have these kinds of agreements that continue to grow. One of the big costs associated with this that we believe is the culprit for some of the growth is the fact that we are now digital rather than paper. So when you think about the paper documents that we have, the paper filings, many of those now live in that digital world. So we have cloud storage, we have data storage, we have all sorts of storage costs associated with those digital documents that were once paper. So that has created a substantial increase in our enterprise agreement costs. And because we need that Microsoft Enterprise Agreement to run our branch of government, this is our priority one request. So you will see it is an ongoing, it's a maintenance agreement. The total request is just over $2 million.
I don't want you to get into specifics, but are you challenged by cyber attacks?
Mr. Chairman, yes. I mean, we have not, I'm going to knock on some wood. We have not yet experienced cyber attacks at the same level that some other judicial branches across the nation have. But we are constantly monitoring those attempts. And so we have a cybersecurity training that we provide to all of our employees. We have monitoring services that monitor people who are trying to get into our network and attack. So I would say we've been fortunate that we haven't had a large scale issue, but I keep hearing from cybersecurity experts that it's not if, it's when, but we'll continue to really work and try to avoid that as long as possible. There was one, Mr. Chairman, there was a county in the state that experienced a cyber attack not too terribly long ago. That did affect the courts because the clerks of district court are on the county network. They are elected county officials. And so that essentially, that clerk's office had to go back to paper for a while. And that was a real challenge for that clerk's office to do that. We worked really heavily with their IT department to try to get them back up and running, but we could not allow the county network to basically invade our systems and bring them down. And so that was really challenging for that circuit court clerk and for the court there to continue to operate. Or district court clerk, my apologies, Mr. Chairman.
I would appreciate it if you keep this committee informed on that. I obviously want to see you protected in that regard. So, other questions? Yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday, we had with the executive branch quite a conversation about Google Enterprise versus Microsoft Enterprise. Obviously, this is the direction you've gone. Are you having any interface issues? Do you also have to maintain any sort of enterprise agreements with Google in order to keep up? Where are we at?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, we don't have any kind of integration issues with Google. Our Nate Goddard, who is the head of our IT division, has had some pretty regular conversations with the director of ETS and just to see if there's ways that we can collaborate and share costs where possible. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that this is a place that we can, but we're certainly open to exploring that with ETS. We haven't had any major issues with Microsoft. I think folks are generally pretty happy with the way that it operates, barring the Surface Hub incident, the Great Surface Hub incident of 2025. But other than that, Mr. Chairman and Representative, we really we rely so heavily on Microsoft, and I think it's been a good vendor for us, good contractor.
Okay, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, moving on to SC 53, you will find our priority number 2 request, and I was going to save this one for last, but I know there's already been quite a bit of discussion, so I'll go ahead and move into this. And so as Chief Justice Baumgarten mentioned, the the JSA account, which is our special revenue account, and that is Unit 0610, that account was created in 2000. It is statutory, right? So there was a statute that was passed, and the language in that statute, I'm just going to read it to you, and it says, the funds within that account shall be used by the Supreme Court for the purchase, maintenance, and operation of computer hardware, including court information technology equipment and software to enhance the communication, records, and management needs of the courts of the judicial branch of the state of Wyoming. And so, as the chief mentioned, what has happened over time is not only have we used it as a spillover account for positions, we have also used it as a spillover account for necessary infrastructure costs where we don't have enough general funds to cover, right? So essentially, it's anything that we have to have for technology that we don't have enough money for in the general fund, we pay for out of JSA. And that really has led to the pretty drastic depletion of that account. The other thing that we've seen is just the skyrocketing cost of technology. And we really are not alone in that challenge. I think you will hear from probably every agency, and I know you're talking to ETS tomorrow, and that will be something I would imagine you'll hear from the director as well. So what we're looking at depletion, as you all know, by budget fiscal year 29, and that is coming like a freight train. And with those positions that we fund out of that JSA account, it really is imperative that we keep those people. And so we cannot deplete that account because we will start to lose the people who support the courts throughout the state. So, Mr. Chairman, that priority number 2 request, as we've already talked about, would be to move the 13 positions that currently live in Unit 0610, the JSA Special Revenue Account, into that general fund unit 0601. So that would be one piece of that request. And then the second piece would be to move what we call it C-Track Enterprise. It is the appellate case management and e-filing system into the JSA account because that account really is designed for enterprise software, and that's what that C-Track Enterprise is. And so it would be essentially a swap of those two pieces. It would be a net request. So the request would be out of the general fund, a net request of $2,280,000, just a little bit over. So, Mr. Chairman, I would imagine there's some additional questions around this. Oh, the only other thing that I would like to add, and I think you received it today, this morning, is we have in our handouts, I believe, fund balances for all of our special revenue accounts. So if you look in the handouts that we provided today, there is one that says, it's page SC 57, Judicial Systems Automation Fund Balance. And so that will give you a picture of what we're looking at in terms of the remaining fund balance in that JSA account, projected expenditures over the next few years, and then again, just shows when we expect that fund to be depleted in budget fiscal year 29.
Questions? Anyone? Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So obviously, kind of a two-prong approach you guys are taking. Number one, sliding 13 FTEs out of the 601 fund to the 610 fund, which will free up that roughly $1.14 million every year. What does that slide us out to? So if we just did one of the prongs, obviously 29 is kind of our date of depletion of this account. Freeing that up, are we sitting there saying, we're on shaky ground, but we could make it? Or is it a situation where it's like, man, we bought ourselves 2-3 years and that's it? I'm getting, the head shakes at 2 to 3 years and that's it. So that's a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Okay. So really it's a situation seeing that $3.6 million increase. Was that a biennium increase? Okay. Okay. Don't you think? Sorry, I had to verbally process that out. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Chairman, so if we looked at, if this exception request is approved, we would slide it out quite a bit. I think we would be looking at a situation where we project out about 10 years for that account. So we look at our expenditures over the next 10 years, what we expect will be coming down the pipe, and what we're bringing in. Assumption, we have to make some assumptions there, obviously, but that would slide that depletion out past that 10-year mark, I believe. And Claire, if we do both, Mr. Chairman. Yes. There we go. Mr. Chairman, my apologies. It would be, if we just did one, the depletion would likely be in budget fiscal year 35.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at this SC 57, the JSA fund balance. And I guess one thing that I don't readily see here, maybe it's here and I'm just not seeing it. I like pictures. I would like to see like 5 years, 4 or 5 of these sessions, but the budgets. And maybe a percentage of what you feel is inappropriate. How much have we robbed from it from there, so that when we look at where we're at now, we say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. Where does that leave the balance? Am I making any sense there? Probably not.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite following, but.
Let me rephrase that. What I'm hearing is that the JSA account is getting robbed as kind of a catch-all fund that is paying off other things. What I'm wondering is, how big of an issue is that? What percentage of this account is being taken away? So that if we stop doing that, that would help me be better to be able to understand, are the fees, how far are they coming short from covering what they really should cover?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraph, I actually did a rough estimate of that, I did a rough estimate of that just yesterday. And if we were not having to use JSA to absorb those typically general fund costs, it would buy us a few years. It wouldn't indefinitely fix the problem.
So I just want to make sure that I'm tracking. This JSA account is fed by the fees that we're talking about increasing. So if we don't increase the fees at this point, we would last a few years. If you got, say, instead of a $20 fee increase, a $10 fee increase, what kind of effect does that have?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraph, again, that would probably buy us just a few years if we were only doing half of what we've requested.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. This is more of a comment, a request. I think, going forward, we could do things a little bit better, so I'm going to make a suggestion here. Administrator Butler, you read the statute where this fund was created, but you stopped short of this part. I'm going to just read it. It says, annually, the Supreme Court shall develop a plan for all trial and appellate courts within the state for the expenditure of funds from the account. Prior to implementation, the plan shall be annually submitted to the Joint Appropriations Interim Committee and Joint Judiciary Interim Committee for review and comment. My anticipation is the things that happened in the past where it wasn't presented to the body or a bill was, not advanced, would probably be a little bit less likely if these reports were formal and presented to the committee. I know I haven't seen such a report. I've asked our staff to look back and they haven't found any kind of formal report of your plan. So that would be helpful, just a better line of communication. So that's my request. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, happy to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, moving on to page SC 54, and this is, again, in Unit 0601, so this is the general fund unit. You will find our priority number 3 request, and that is Meraki security equipment. So this request is to pay for the network infrastructure that we have for the judicial branch. So as you walk around this building, I'm sure you have them, there are little boxes on the wall that you plug into to get internet access, to connect to, your network at the legislative branch. We have similar things throughout the entire judicial branch. So in every courthouse and every place across the branch, we have those little boxes that help with network connectivity and internet connectivity. Those pieces of equipment are nearing their end of life. And so when that happens, we will stop getting security patches for our network, and that will open us up to some potential cybersecurity attacks. And so we need to replace all of those pieces of equipment branch-wide. And that's what that request is for. That priority number 3 request is for IT hardware to replace those, and then also for contract services to purchase services to go throughout the branch to every courtroom and replace those pieces of equipment. Mr. Chairman, the request for that is $775,000.
Thank you.
And that is a one-time request.
Okay, proceed.
Mr. Chairman, moving on, our priority number 4 is the appellate case management system. So you heard us talk about priority number 2 and moving that the costs of that system into the JSA fund. This is a request to get funding for it. Historically, that has been a general fund cost. We have had general fund appropriations for the appellate case management and e-filing system. And so this is a request to continue to sustain that system as we move forward. If this body and the legislature decides to approve priority number 2, this priority number 4 is not necessary because those costs would then be borne by the 0610 unit, the JSA special revenue account. So, Mr. Chairman, just to give you a little bit of background, this is essentially the system that operates and provides for a mechanism to track filings in the Supreme Court, track money. Also, at the Supreme Court level, it provides a level of public access so that folks can look at opinions that are coming out of the court. And so this is a system that is vitally important to the operation of the Supreme Court.
Good.
All right, Mr. Chairman, moving on to priority number 5, that is Microsoft Unified Support. This relates somewhat to priority number 1. So Microsoft historically has provided support for its products and services as part of our enterprise agreement. They have changed their business model, unfortunately, and now we have to pay for that support. And so what the support would do is it would help our very small IT staff troubleshoot, look for bugs in different systems, things that are not working on the back end to ensure that we can continue to operate. So the request is an ongoing request for $210,000. Mr. Chairman, moving on to SC 55, you'll see our priority number 6 request, and this is just for IT inflation costs. We continue to experience inflation every year on all of our IT systems and services and equipment. And so this is a request for to kind of bolster the inflation that we know we will experience in our maintenance agreements, and then contract services related to technology. And that request is an ongoing request of $56,000.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, moving on, I'm going to now move you into SC 57. Again, this is our special revenue, the 0610 unit within our court technology division. As we talked about, this is a special revenue account funded by filing fees. And moving on to SC 58, you will see a spending authority request. It's for equipment replacement throughout the branch. So that's at the very bottom of SC 58. It would be a total request of just over $1.6 million. And again, just in spending authority, this would allow us to basically replace equipment that we have throughout the branch. So that would include things like hardware, so the computers that we use throughout the branch, and other peripherals, printers, other things like that. And then also to begin to replace our courtroom technology equipment throughout the branch. So it has been a number of years since we have replaced that technology. As Chief Justice Baumgarten mentioned, we have done it on occasion when something breaks, but it really is time to be a bit more proactive about replacement to ensure that we're not in a place where things break before we replace them. So we will begin that, and this special or this spending authority request would allow us to begin that replacement of equipment throughout the branch.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, the last thing that I would just have you do, just so we can make sure that I didn't miss anything and you have no further questions, is to turn back to our summary sheet, which is on Romanet 5. And I believe we have hit all of the exception requests on that page. So as we mentioned before, the vast majority of our requests are technology related. So priority requests 1 through 6 are all technology. Number 7 relates to the replacement of copiers. And then we have a spending authority request out of the JSA special revenue account to begin to replace equipment, and an organizational net to zero realignment within our Supreme Court agency budget. So, Mr. Chairman, our request, as we've talked about today, really is to continue to operate our branch in this modern world. There is so much technology related to what we do, and unfortunately, that will just continue. As Chief Justice Baumgarten mentioned, we are kind of staring down the barrel of a gun here, because we will really begin to have to look at cutting specific things out of those technology budgets moving forward if we don't get some relief. And that will affect citizens, it will affect the courts, it will affect litigants. And so these, I can't really stress enough how important it is that we continue to be funded so we can continue to operate in the way that we would like. The other thing that I would mention, Mr. Chairman, is I have heard consistently, I would say over the last couple of years, although this has been something we've talked about for a long time, is there is a very real desire for remote public access to court documents. We don't have that today in the vast majority of our courts. What we have is we have a public access system at our courthouses that you can go look at, but remote public access is not available in our circuit courts or our district courts. And I continue to hear how important that is, and how much people want to be able to access court documents wherever they're at. We would really like to get there. There are a few pieces that have to fall along the way, but one of the big pieces is funding. If we don't get funding, or if we deplete our JSA account, there will be no opportunity for us to purchase a public access or remote public access system. And so that's definitely something that I think is worth considering, is we would really like to get to that place, but if we don't have the funding, that's not something we'll be able to do.
how much funding do you need for that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know off the top of my head. What I would tell you is I would anticipate that funding would come out of the JSA account because it is an enterprise system. I mean, we would have to really look at the costs and whether or not that could be sustained long-term, and we can do that. But it is something that we wouldn't even be able to consider if we don't get some relief in that JSA fund.
And then for members of the public who are watching this, what is your total biennium budget ask?
Mr. Chairman, the total general fund, Mr. Chairman, let me go back. On Romanet 4, you will find our budget request, which is $125,492,800 is the total request for this biennium.
Representative Pendergraft and then co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just an impression, and maybe it's distorted because this all kind of hits at once. But I see what feels like a wave if I look at the general fund requests, number 3, number 7 are one-time requests. And then you can anticipate that in another 5 to 7 years, there's going to be another one-time request. Going back in part to what Co-Chairman Bear mentioned earlier about the fees and then tying those fees to something within the economy. I guess I would like to see us try to level this out so that we anticipate in advance in another 4 or 5 years, and we begin laying money aside for that, similar to what we've done with building maintenance and that. And I don't know how much of that you have worked on or whether that's a direction that you're trying to move. I know that there are several ongoing requests here, especially for subscriptions. But I guess I would like to see it level out so that we have a certain request for IT, and it goes up, for example, with inflation. Do you think that's even feasible?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, we have moved through the operation of the Judicial Council over the last probably 3 years to a more regular 10-year budgeting cycle so that we can look out further than the branch historically looked. And we're able to do that with this sort of collaborative work that the Circuit Court, District Courts, and Supreme Court are undertaking. We have not looked at trying to tie fees to some sort of economic indicator. As I mentioned to Co-Chairman Bear, we're happy to look at that because we appreciate that's a problem for all of you and it's a problem for us as well. Some things with these one-time requests, I think it's just difficult to try to project out through that lifespan what the costs will be. We just can't accurately estimate what the cost would be at the end of life of some of these equipment, some of this equipment. We do the best we can with the expertise that we can. But I appreciate, the desire to level out these bumps or waves. And I think that we've seen that also in the need to keep coming back for the judicial systems automation account fee increase, because we try to project, but then you see costs that you just couldn't project that come back in. I think that's part of the foundation, and I know that you all give this careful consideration, and I appreciate the differences of opinion, but the draw out of that account for salaries and benefits is just always going to be, we are an agency of people. That is our largest cost. And so and this was part of the council's discussion in that realignment, to really get that JSA account focused on what the statute intended that it cover. through a 10-year budget projection and understanding, and I guess the branch believing in the concept that those costs should be paid by the people that most benefit from that, in that fee link. That's really was the, I guess, philosophical basis for the two-pronged approach that we're presenting to you. And if there's a better way to tie those fees, you know, to accommodate all those changes that we can anticipate, we'll be happy to cooperate.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. I think Administrator Butler brought up a great point, you know, the demand for more transparency and availability of data online, in the cloud, whatever. And Chief Justice, you brought up AI. You know, we have many new things on the horizon. I anticipate with data centers coming that the cost of hosting this information, accessing this information will probably go down and become reasonable for everyone over time. But clearly, it creates an issue where your branch needs to be able to adjust with the technology. And I feel like over time, as I look at the history of this, there's been a paralysis of analysis. And it's because there's so many decision makers. I do not want to relinquish oversight of your branch. I think that the legislature needs to maintain that. But when it's fees that are you know, being assessed, and then those fees, as you state, are going to be used for the end user to receive a benefit, it seems that you're going to get the feedback initially and immediately as to, you know, what's needed, how it's working, what's not working. And it seems like if you're going to be nimble enough to address the technology increases or changes in cost of that technology, you need to have a little more flexibility. And that's why I've proposed a different approach. It'll be interesting to see if my colleagues agree with, you know, potentially this could be seen as relinquishing some oversight. I don't see it that way because, again, the funds are coming from those people who benefit from it. And if they don't like it, they're not happy, they're gonna rise up and say so, and you're gonna have to go a different direction and change those fees to accommodate. So I know you already provide great customer service, but I think that just the things that have been coming up in this discussion prove out that it's going to be necessary that we stop analyzing and we start making decisions and moving forward with them. And that's why I would like to see a different approach, if you will, than what we've done in the past. So, you know, I know this is new and I'm unloading it on you here in a meeting like this, but I hope we can continue these kinds of discussions so that we can provide that ability to address these technology issues much more rapidly and not get tied down in more committees and more bodies having to make these decisions in the future. That's a statement, so I'll finish with, wouldn't you agree?
Mr. Chairman, could I offer a brief just explanation, I guess, of how we might be able to help, and then clarification of a comment I made in my introductory comments. One thing we can do and we can initiate immediately is we have a resource through the National Center for State Courts, and we can inquire of them, are there other state judicial branches who have taken a different approach to paying for technology that is tied to economic indicators. And we'll explore that immediately, and if we have any quick answers, we will pass that along. And Mr. Chairman, as to your point on public access, it is something that we're keenly aware of. It's something that honestly started in discussions between the branch and the legislature long before even my service began on the court. And that was we needed a system of platforms to be able to get to that point of remote access. And so, as Ms. Butler said, we can't do it now. We're not even to the point of being able to sort of budget costs or explore costs. But what we have done is we now have all of our trial courts on a digitalized docket management system. That took a series of appropriations and expenditures and years to accomplish. The next building block on that was e-filing, so that all of the documents that were filed were electronic. E-filing is now live in all of our district courts, and we are in the process of implementing it in our circuit courts. When those two building blocks are in place and the functionality can be maintained, and they're stable on an ongoing basis, that's the foundation we need then to be able to start exploring remote access. So it's on our radar, but we're still working on that second building block.
Follow-up? So we'll go to Senator Grew and then Representative Harrelson, and I will be taking a break at 10 a.m. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taking off on what Chairman Bear was saying, I really think too, getting us timely reports on the revenue side will help that system a lot as far as being able for us to see and look forward to see where these things are going. In addition, I'm going to talk salaries just a little bit. Once again, getting that information about your FTEs, getting all our reports, you know how we are. We're a very report-driven group, data-driven group as far as being able to, and I know it's different from different branch. You're a different branch, and I respect that, but seeing those things in that format, getting the D sheets, getting all the sheets on FTEs, so we can kind of plot that out as far as where they're going. That too would be helpful, so we don't get crossways with the rest of the system. So, and that leads me to my question: where are you in your division in the court system in the salary bands? Given the governor was here yesterday and talked about his ideas on pay bands for the rest of the enterprise. I know you're separate. Got it. But I just wanted to kind of get your take on that, where you are, where you're going, where we're sitting right now with regard to salaries across your enterprise.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, so I would say thank you to you all, because the legislature has been incredibly generous the last few years in pay increases to the folks within the judicial branch. We are at the same level, I believe, as the executive branch is today. Look at that.
Did you get a head nod over there?
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I believe what the governor talked about was moving up to some more recent pay tables for the executive branch, and I think that obviously that makes sense. We would support that, and we would follow suit essentially, as if we would request similar funding for our branch of government that would be given to the executive branch. And I believe the governor has actually included that in his estimate or funding estimate for employees.
Make sure I'm looking for head nods. Yeah, got head nods there, head nods back, head nods up. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one more thing. The one thing to keep in mind is those salaries are for judicial branch employees. The salaries for judges and justices are statutory. So they, I will tell you right now, they were sitting at, in terms of comparisons nationwide, the justices and judges are sitting at like 41st or 42nd in the nation in terms of judicial pay.
Okay, follow up.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole shouldn't go down, but where are we with that on judges' salaries? Are we still in, did we fix that? Or are we still in the footnote mode? I'm trying to remember.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, it's in a footnote.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Harrelson and then Senator Larson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So shifting gears, Chancery Court. It was wild. I actually, the other day, was listening to a financial podcast, and they went into talking about LLCs. And they said best states to build an LLC or to establish an LLC, Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming. And they went through Delaware and they said, this is the conversation. And they said, we've placed that as number 3, actually. And then they said Nevada and all the reasons, number 2, and each one of them had their reasonings. And they said, number 1 state to establish an LLC is Wyoming. And one of the reasons they use is the newly established Chancery Court. They said, if you ever found yourself into a legal issue, there is an opportunity to quickly be heard and for that issue to be resolved. And so the question I ask is, obviously the Chancery Court went from kind of this fledgling conversation turned into, we're seeing cases turned into, have we thought about what would happen if during the middle of a biennium that blew up? And we really started seeing a kind of a freight train of caseloads coming down the pike. I'm not asking you to add more FTEs. Hear me right, but I am asking, have we looked with some forethought in mind of what could possibly happen? On a national level, these are conversations happening, and we're seeing the increase in LLC filings. We're seeing the increase of just kind of trying to keep hold on that animal. Have we seen that increase flying through that Chancery Court? I know you and I talked a little bit about this in our conversation a while back on that Zoom call, but can you kind of address that and talk about a single judge, 3 employees, and what their world may be looking at right now?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Haraldson, so right now I would say, and I know we've talked about this, there is steady growth in terms of caseloads for Chancery Court. We have not seen, exponential growth, drastic growth in a short period of time, but we anticipate that it will continue to grow. We have not really thought through what would happen if all of a sudden we had, 200 cases filed next year. That would definitely be something that we would talk with the Judicial Council about. I would say if we're looking in terms of like a short-term way to shore up, one of the things that we did before we had a Chancery Court judge is we had district court judges who presided over cases. And I would anticipate that we would see that same collaboration and cooperation between the district court conference and the Chancery Court judge, if we saw that drastic increase, and potentially would have to come back to this body to request another judge for the Chancery Court. But I think we could cover for a time if that happened.
Senator?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to go to another topic, and that would be the Common Jury Fund. I see there's a standard budget request, 135, I think. And I don't understand courts that well, but I think this goes for circuit courts, if I'm correct. And I've been contacted by the Bighorn County commissioners and the cost of jury trials, I think, for the counties. And has there been discussion about that and trying to help the smaller counties afford those when they come? Unsurprisingly, if they have 2 a year or something, I mean, it pulls a big budget, dollars from their budget.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, so that you are correct, that common jury fund is for the circuit courts. It is an interesting, our judicial branch has an interesting structure. It's not unique. There are many branches, judicial branches across the nation that have a similar structure, and we're called a non-unified court system, which means that we have courts that don't fall under the purview of the Supreme Court, right? So the district courts, as I mentioned before, the district court judges and their chambers, they're all separate agencies. They're all independent of each other and independent of the Supreme Court. And the other piece of that is the clerks of district court are independently elected county officials, right? And so the dynamic that you see in this jury fund is the circuit courts fund jury costs through the general fund because they're state they fall under the Supreme Court. The circuit courts are, clerks are state employees. On the district court side, the clerk's offices, because they are county clerk's offices, those jury funds are paid for through the county. And so that's why you'll see this under the circuit courts and not the district courts, because the state, you don't fund jury costs. The state does not fund jury costs at the district court level, but it does at the circuit court level. And I do understand, I recognize that in those counties where they are unaccustomed to jury trials, it can be a kind of a shocking cost when it comes in. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know, Senator, if that answered your question at all, but I just wanted to make sure that there was an understanding of that kind of unique dynamic.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yeah, I guess I knew that, and I guess, so in the Judiciary Commission, is that what you call that? Has there been discussion about this, or even in the district court? Do they have an association or something where they've discussed how to pay for those, to help?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, the district court clerks, the elected district court clerks do have an association. We are in communication with them. I'm sure they discuss this amongst themselves and with their county commissioners for their funding through the county. The circuit court clerks also have an association, but they're in more direct communication with the administrative office of courts. We didn't ask for an exception request out of that because overall for the biennium, we haven't seen the need or the cost of that increasing. Certainly over any biennium, we see fluctuations. Some counties might not have a jury trial or one a year, and other counties, for just circumstances, beyond anybody's control, the cases that come in, they might have 9 or 10 in a year. But we have the nimbleness if there is a circuit court in a county that is experiencing unexpected costs, and I'll look for a head nod from Claire, but we can move that money around as needed between the circuit courts and the various districts. Now, I know there was some press not long ago about Sweetwater County at the district court level experiencing some extraordinary costs, and I think they just have to work with their county commissioners of how to budget and plan from biennium to biennium.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions? Chief Justice, anything else on this section?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Then we're going to take a 15-minute break. We'll be back at 10:15 and start up again. Thank you. Okay, I'll bring this meeting to order. Chief Justice will continue with district courts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Butler and Judge Snyder will handle that presentation.
Mr. Chairman, this is why. I had a whole piece that I could say about the district courts, but I don't know why I would when we have a district court judge sitting right next to me. So, Mr. Chairman, I would hand it over to Judge Snyder to give you an overview of the district courts and any additional information. The one thing I would say about the district courts is there are no exception requests within the district courts, and so that would just be a standard budget request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really, it's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the district judges. I serve as their conference chair and I serve on the Judicial Council. And my favorite job is just to be a judge. The work we do is so important. I can't think of a better job in the whole world. In district court, I always tell my kids that we do the big stuff. We handle the felony cases. So anything that can put you in prison for over a year falls under our jurisdiction. Juvenile cases, which I think that's really where I hang my hat at, is dealing with family matters and custody and divorce disputes. Civil cases where the dispute's over $50,000, or if it involves real property, when we're talking about our land and our property, that's important stuff in district court. My favorite thing to do are adoptions and name changes. Those are the two things in district courts. They always come with good stories as to what got us into that situation. But then we also hear a lot of appeals, and that takes up a bulk of our time, appeals from municipal court, circuit court, and administrative agencies. So that's kind of the bulk of what we do as district judges. As mentioned, there are 27 of us across the state, one in every county seat, and a couple that have multiple judges in the jurisdictions. The nice thing is that we travel throughout the state when necessary, and we do cover for each other, handle any conflicts, or try to balance the caseload as appropriate. Our theme, I feel like as the judiciary, is we're coming to you with technology asks. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our use of technology. Claire and Elisa and I, over the break, were talking about the last time the judiciary asked for an increase in JSA fund was in 2020, which seems like not very long ago, except for how much our use of technology has changed, because with COVID, we relied almost exclusively on digital or virtual court appearances as COVID affected the courts, and we stayed open the entire time and made sure that court happened. And it has changed the way that court runs now. I don't think there's a single day that we don't use virtual appearances or technology in the courtroom. And there's so many stories I could tell you, the good, the bad, the especially ugly cases of how we use technology. But I would say it is mostly good. It is mostly a savings to the litigants, to the attorneys, and as we're getting into this season, really a safety factor for me when we have people traveling Interstate 80 to get to Rollins. It's not always very nice, and so that's also something that we keep in mind. I know somebody asked the question earlier about whether or not defendants object, and again, I'm from Rollins, and so occasionally the inmates from the penitentiary would like to have a field trip over to the courthouse, and we accommodate them. Certainly don't ever force anyone. Our courtroom doors are open and everyone is welcome to be there in person. Usually it's an accommodation or a request to somebody who does not live in Carbon County. But certainly if there's any objection, we are open and ready to see them in person. But we use it in a variety of other ways too. Just yesterday, we had a doctor from the Wyoming State Hospital who didn't have to travel to Rollins for a hearing. So when we have expert testimony, that certainly cuts down on costs and allows for just better productivity of everyone involved in the court system. When children are placed in mental health facilities because they have high needs, we do regular review hearings, And it's nice to put eyes on that child while they're in their treatment program and not just have them appear through their attorney or over the phone. So it's really important to have these resources. Sometimes we get people who don't follow decorum, and my best option is to stop the hearing and reschedule it in person. And it's amazing how that decorum can change quickly being in person versus virtually. But I think that most people are very respectful, and they have really learned the rules of how to appear in court. With regard to our budget requests, we run a lean ship in district court. We rarely come with budget exceptions that aren't copy machines, so we do appreciate that consideration. We all have the same staff. It's a judge, it is a judicial assistant, and then a law clerk and a court reporter. I think there's a couple jurisdictions in Cheyenne and Casper who have an administrative assistant who helps a receptionist who answers the phone, because there are multiple judges, and helps route everything to the right department. But we're just here to do the work. We're really appreciative of all your support, especially what you've done for our staff over the last few years. Those are hardworking citizens, and we really appreciate them, and we appreciate your support for them. But I would be glad to answer any questions anyone has about the district courts, and always welcome you to come to our courthouses and our courtrooms anytime that you have a few extra minutes to see what we do.
So Judge, I want to thank you and the district court throughout the state for the job and the service you give the people of Wyoming. I know your job is not easy, and I know you could tell us a number of stories. So I appreciate you and what the district court does. Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I don't want to get too far afield here, but the Chief Justice mentioned AI. I'm very curious how you see AI impacting the courts today, and I'll ask you to go ahead and prognosticate what you see in the future as well.
We see a bit of it, Mr. Chairman. We do see a bit of it used. Sometimes it's great because forms can get filled out a little better, particularly by self-represented litigants. But there are certain criteria you have to meet. You have to put down that you've been a resident for 60 days or whatever the criteria is. And AI doesn't always know that. There are attorneys, not particularly in my court, but that have gotten in trouble for using AI and using case citations that they haven't double checked. And so we will check it. So they need to be very careful about the use of that and the implications that could have on their law license. I think that I'm optimistic going forward that there are going to be good guidelines and good use for AI. We had a demonstration from one of the judges who showed us how even as judges we can use it to help organize things. I have maybe used it to assist in a letter of recommendation for a high school kid before. And so I think it's a tool and we need to use it as such, but we need to make sure that we're using our brains first.
Who else? Who else? Anyone? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for
Appreciate
having
it.
us.
Yes, Mr. Richards.
Yes, Chairman Salazar, the judiciary has been very efficient. As indicated, when we create the agenda, we don't know if agencies have exception requests. The next two agencies do have small exception requests, Agency 103, Board of Law Examiners, and then Commission on Judicial Conduct, both of which are very small. And with your indulgence, I think there might be opportunity to put two more agencies in before lunch. The first of which is the State Budget Department, who is already here with us, Agency 96, and then the last agency for the day, Agency 270, Office of Administrative Hearings, is on notice for 11:30 if you proceed as expected.
Yes, we'll go that route then. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we're state, who's up? The state budget? Okay, good. Please come forward. Welcome. You can just introduce yourselves and take it away.
Chairman Salazar, members of the Joint Appropriations Committee. Good morning. My name is Kathy Dunsel, and I'm the Admissions Director for the Wyoming State Bar. And here at the table with me are Chairman of the Board of Law Examiners, Attorney Randy Reed, and Bar Counsel Mark Gifford for the Wyoming State Bar. We are here before you to request spending authority for the Wyoming Judicial Branch Board of Law Examiners budget. Our standard and exception budget request is for Could
you move your mic a little closer? We're
Oh,
just
of
not picking you
course.
up real well. Thank you, sorry, didn't.
No, you're fine, thank you. That's what happens when you're only 5 foot, you forget how far away things are. Our standard and exception budget request is for $266,037 for the 2027-2028 biennium. The current balance in our special revenue account is a little more than $196,000. And that account is funded with application fees, which is $600 per applicant, that are paid by prospective members for admission to the Wyoming State Bar. And these funds do cover the expenses that are essential to the function of the Board of Law Examiners and the Character and Fitness Committee. We're not asking for any taxpayer money. We're just happy to answer any questions related to our budget request.
Good, great. Any questions? Yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the $600 fee. When was that last set?
That's a great question, Representative. Chairman Reed knows the answer to that.
Yes, I believe, Mr. Chairman, the fees were last raised from $450 to $600 in 2013.
Follow up? Other questions? Anyone else? Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I believe when I originally read your request, there was comments about a need to increase the spending based on psychologist fees, based on special requests for examining the bar exam. And I'd like a little bit more of a narrative on that. Why is there such an uptick? I think it used to be 10%, and now it's a much larger percent that are asking for these exceptions. And I've done a little bit of research, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that if somebody has a need that meets ADA requirements, that they also are required to go to their doctor and get that proof that they need that, which I don't know if that mitigates the need for psychologist examination or not. So if you could just give us a little bit of clarity on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I'll give it a shot here. So you're right, the exception request that we're asking for is due primarily to the increase in the number of special testing accommodations, primarily for applicants that might have PTSD or ADHD. We use licensed psychologists to evaluate their exception requests. And the reason that we use licensed folks to do that work is because we think it's more fair to the applicant. I just think that they get a more professional review of their request. The other reason in our view to use the licensed professionals is to just, we think it's a better use of the resources. We think that our resources are better spent to have a complete, thorough professional evaluation upfront rather than to have litigation down the road because they were not allowed the accommodations that they requested, the applicants. So that's my take on it. Hopefully I answered your question. If not, maybe Mark can.
To opine, I do have some follow-up, but if you'd like to add to that, would be fine.
Representative Bear, what we've seen in the last few years is kids coming in and applying to the bar that have a history of testing accommodations, some of them going back to grade school. So they're used to receiving these accommodations. Our experience is that public schools and universities are reluctant to deny any special testing accommodations. So they come to us with this history of having always received them. And a lot, as Randy said, a lot of what we see is PTSD diagnoses, ADHD diagnoses, and for those people, a board of lawyers is not very qualified to pass on what's a reasonable accommodation for somebody with those diagnoses. And so we contract with a professor at the University of Syracuse who does this for a number of jurisdictions, reviews a lot of PTSD and ADHD special accommodations requests, and he's great at narrowing right in on what would be fair for this applicant. Sometimes he suggests a little less time than they're requesting. Sometimes he suggests additional accommodations that they aren't requesting in order to give them the best shot at being successful on the bar exam. So although we don't spend a lot of money on him every year, I don't know what that figure is. It's in the single-digit thousands of dollars. It's very invaluable to the members of the Board of Law Examiners that have to be passing on these requests.
And Mr. Co-Chairman, may I follow up as well? So you're correct. They do have, the applicants do submit the documentations from their treating professionals, but that's just really giving our expert an idea of what their disability is, and then can take that to the level of what that means to a secure bar exam. So it's not just that our expert needs to verify that they have their disability. It's just, what does that disability look like in a testing environment, and as secure as the Wyoming bar exam?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for that answer, Administrator. That clarifies that they are being pre-qualified before you're taking on the expenditure. The reason I ask is because this is, you're trying to be fair to that particular applicant, but how is that fair to the other applicants that don't get this accommodation? I'm sure that that's being taken into account. That's why you're trying to narrow it down to exactly what they need. My question now is for you attorneys. You know, if we're qualifying, you know, these people to be attorneys in the state of Wyoming with these special accommodations, how is that going to translate then to issues as they serve the public in that role?
It's a great question.
That's a frequent topic of conversation when the board is reviewing these requests. Like, if you need this much additional time to pass the bar exam, how does that translate over into private practice? And it's a fair question. So we're caught between this tension of wanting to ensure that people meet minimum competence before they're admitted to the bar, and also having to deal with an array of federal laws about ADA accommodation requests, and we're kind of walking that tightrope. But ultimately, if they can pass the bar exam with the special testing accommodation, at least they've assured the board that they meet those minimum competence requirements. How that translates to a private practice environment or a government practice environment is going to be, the proof's going to be in the pudding on those things. So.
Other questions? Okay, anything else?
No, thank you so
Thank
much.
you for being here, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. Mr. Richards, who's next?
Yes, the next agency for your consideration is Agency 103. This one is a separate book, very thin book in your drawers, the Commission on Judicial Conduct and Ethics. Ms. Soto?
Come on up. Welcome. Morning.
Good morning, Chairman Salazar, Chairman Bear, members of the committee. The chairman of the commission is online. He's
Can you
virtual.
introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. I'm Wendy Soto. I'm the executive director of the Commission on Judicial Conduct and Ethics. And with me today is one of our commissioners from here in Cheyenne, Steve Klein, and then Brian Ulmer is online. And he'll give his presentation first, and I will follow up.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brian Ulmer. I am the current chair of the Wyoming Commission on Judicial Conduct and Ethics. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you remotely this morning. And as you know, with you in person today is Ms. Soto, the commission's executive director, and one of our commission members, Mr. Stephen Klein. The Commission on Judicial Conduct and Ethics plays a vital role in maintaining the integrity of Wyoming's judicial system, providing a mechanism for Wyoming citizens to seek an independent review of a judge's conduct when a judge is believed to have acted unethically, or when a judge suffers from a disability which interferes with their ability to properly and competently perform the duties of their judicial office. The Commission provides a means of discipline in the form of negotiated settlements in minor cases to public censure, suspension, or removal, retirement of judicial officers in serious cases. The Commission's oversight extends to all judicial officers, including the 52 trial court judges, the 5 Supreme Court justices, 3 magistrates, and 78 municipal court judges that serve 98 different municipalities across the state of Wyoming. The Commission is a constitutional entity. It's created by Article 5, Section 6 of the Wyoming Constitution. It consists of 12 members who reside in the state of Wyoming, 2 district court judges and 1 circuit court judge who are elected by their respective conferences, 3 members of the Wyoming State Bar who are appointed by the State Bar, and 6 citizen electors of the state who are not active or retired judges, or attorneys. These 6 electors are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. As to the budget, Mr. Chairman, and the committee, the Commission's budget request for the biennium is for a total of $372,408. Included in that amount is a technology replacement program exception request of $3,223 for the purpose of replacing computer hardware and software. And this replacement comes within the cycle of the ETS. The Commission operates efficiently within its small budget. I would note that exception requests from the Commission are rare, and that the Commission is a responsible and conservative steward of the taxpayers' money. Adequate funding is necessary to protect the rights of citizens and allow the Commission to fully investigate allegations of unethical behavior against judicial officers, to bring charges against those officers if appropriate, and to prevent delays of disciplinary proceedings in order to fulfill the Commission's constitutionally mandated mission. The workload of the Commission is unpredictable. It's impossible to anticipate how many cases will be filed, how many of those cases will need to be investigated, and if any particular case or cases will be significant and complex that would require more time and expense, including more attorney's fees associated with the cost of adjudicating those cases. The Commission has always negotiated reduced attorney fee hourly rates with disciplinary counsel, and the Wyoming lawyers who serve as disciplinary counsel are willing to do this work at a reduced rate because they recognize the importance of the work. Also notable are the many hours of professional services that the volunteer commissioners donate to this process. My experience on the Commission has shown that Wyoming citizens are fortunate to have a judiciary of the highest quality. Through my experience as a member of the Commission, which includes learning about disciplinary cases in other states, I have become aware of a variety of ethics issues that exist in those other jurisdictions, and I'm pleased to report that we do not have many of the more egregious ethical cases that exist in other states. I think this is largely due to our merit-based system of appointing judges and on the quality of judges who are appointed and serve in Wyoming. Importantly, I think the lack of serious infractions is also due to the Commission's existence and work and to its ability to perform its functions with adequate funding. It has been a personal and professional honor to serve on this Commission. The quality of the members and the interaction between the judges, attorneys, and citizen layperson members in ensuring the ethics and integrity of our judicial officers has been very rewarding. I believe we have an excellent system in place that Wyoming can be proud of. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I appreciate and thank you again for your time and the opportunity to appear before you remotely. And at this point, unless there are any questions of me, I'll turn over our budget presentation to Ms. Soto.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Ulmer, I was just curious if you have the numbers available, how many complaints have you received in the last 12 months and, or any other period of time? And then in comparison to that, how many judges have been reprimanded or other actions have been taken versus the number of complaints?
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Bear, I know that information in terms of this year's to date, I don't have that. I believe that Ms. Soto would have that information. And those numbers and the disciplinary actions that have been taken against any judicial officers in the state are indicated in our annual report as well. And so I know that information is available. I apologize, don't have that at my fingertips. I can tell you anecdotally, just having reviewed the annual report in the course of our work and my work as a commissioner, that the number of complaints has gone up last year over previous years. And I don't know if that trend is going to continue. I believe it probably will continue. And in part, it's because the commission has worked to make the process of being able to lodge a complaint easier through an online system. I think that has made our access to the commission more available to the public, which is important and one of the goals that we have. So it's not surprising to me to see that the number of complaints have gone up. I don't believe that the number or amount of discipline has increased significantly over the past years. But again, I would defer to Ms. Soto to answer that as she's more familiar with the day-to-day complaints that have come in over the last 12 months.
Cases are dismissed without any further investigation. But I can certainly provide you with more detailed information, or you can find it on our website. Okay? All right, thank you. Well, my presentation is pretty short and simple as usual. As you know, the commission's budget covers typical expenses of operating a small office, a one-person office. That includes personnel, travel for meetings and training, administrative cost, technology, and office expenses, and the cost of hiring disciplinary counsel on those occasions when we need to. As Chairman Ulmer mentioned, the commission has just this exception request this year. We're requesting $3,223, $1,995 to replace a laptop and monitor. That's the standard TRP replacement by ETS, and then $1,022 for maintenance agreements for software. You'll find those requests on pages 8 and 9 of the budget book. The total request for 27-28 biennium is $372,408, and that includes the exception request. I'm prepared to answer any questions if anyone has any.
So a long time ago, my father was on the Board of Judicial Standards in a different state decades and decades ago, and he's passed away, but I wish he was here today because it's so ironic. But I would ask him what was going on, and he wouldn't tell me a thing. Mm-hmm. It was all confidential. And so as a small kid, it just heightened my interest in what you all do. So, but of course, thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you.
Are there any
Chairman
questions?
Salazar?
Yes, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you guys for being here and bringing this, such a large ask. But I actually had a question. We've been seeing Microsoft and Google, and then I look and see WordPerfect. And I'm just asking the question. I didn't even know it existed. I think it was one of the first typing platforms I used. So can you talk to me about WordPerfect and why we're using WordPerfect?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson. Yes, you can. You are looking at an old school paralegal, originally working in legal offices. And so that's the software that I grew up on. So I use it, but I also use other software. I use it primarily to write. And then, of course, when I'm sending something out to others, I will convert it or use Microsoft Word. But it's still updated. I can get new versions of it. So I anticipate that we may not need that in the future because I'm retiring this year. And surely someone who didn't grow up on WordPerfect won't need it. So, but thank you for the question.
How many years have you been at this?
Chairman Salazar, I have been with the commission for 14 years. It'll be 15. And I've been with the state for 27.
Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love WordPerfect.
Pardon me?
I love WordPerfect.
Yay.
I'm looking at my little book here and the numbers don't match, and I wonder if there has been an update that I haven't received. Anybody have any insight? And we can take that up aside from here. I'm just saying the numbers aren't matching on what I have.
I'm not sure, Chairman Salazar, I'm not sure what the mistake is, if it's on my part.
I'm being asked which numbers, just the numbers on the exception request. I have $3,018. I believe you gave a different number. It's not a big thing, but they're not the same.
Any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, if you add them together, they will add up to $3,018. There's multiple ones. There's one for the hardware, there's one for the software, et cetera, but those numbers add up. And by the way, Mr. Chairman, just as a point of reference, we got the judicial branch in and we got judicial conduct and ethics. The state budget department operates the judicial conduct and ethics on the executive branch side to complete the independence of that. So all the budget processing and everything that takes place for the judicial conduct and ethics is supported by the state budget department.
Representative Pendergraft, are you good to go? Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll talk with Mr. Hibbard and compare what I'm looking at. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to?
I just want to express my appreciation for all of you and your hard work, and thank you for your consideration of our requests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Can I ask the Chief Justice to come up? I think we had just one follow-up question from my co-chair, and then we'll hit the next group of folks here.
Madam Chief Justice and Chairman, thank you. I apologize for not asking this earlier. Just things got ahead of me there and you got to sit down before I had the opportunity. I have a policy question, and this is about something that occurred before you're taking over as Chief Justice, but if you could opine upon it, I would appreciate it. You know, not long ago, we had two key bills that passed out of this body that were pro-life, very important to the people of Wyoming. And this body has given your branch the opportunity to use retired judges when necessary to deal with schedule conflicts and things like that. But the Supreme Court did determine and use a retired judge, which effectively struck down two bills that were pro-life bills. And I'm just curious, why was that option used at that time? And would we anticipate seeing a lot of that in the future? It is a policy thing, and I'd like to have your take on it, because, it was important legislation, and that particular judge would never be before the people for a retention vote, having been a retired judge. So if you could opine upon that, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that particular assignment occurred before I became Chief Justice, and I'm aware of the situation that you're talking about. Basically, the way our policy works for the assignment of retired judges is whether it's a circuit court judge or a district court judge that needs some backup, they're asked to first check amongst their conference, whether they have a conflict, whether it's a workload issue. It can be any number of issues. I don't know the underlying issue in that particular case. But if there is not the capacity within the conference to cover whatever that need is that's been expressed through the conference, then a request comes up through the Wyoming Judicial Council. For timeliness purposes, the Executive Committee, which is the Chief Justice, the President of the District Court Conference, and the President of the Circuit Court Conference will evaluate that request and make a decision. It's my understanding in that case, it went through the process. There are a few retired trial court judges who are available and have expressed an interest in handling these things. What we find is maybe most often those that are most recently retired, as you know, there's a mandatory 70 and you're out. And as they're easing into retirement, they express an interest in covering cases. So there is a small pool of judges available, and that assignment was made through that process. It has nothing about the process and policy, looks at the underlying nature of the case. I know, as all of you know, we take the cases as they come, when they're filed, where they're filed, and nothing about our policy of utilizing retired judges when needed is based on the nature of the underlying case. I can assure you, I wasn't part of that decision, but I have no reason to believe that the policy of, assigning basically on an as available in any way took into consideration the underlying nature of the cases that you mentioned. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Richards, what do we have?
Yes, so that concludes the morning that is on your current agenda.
Okay.
And we have the benefit of having the State Budget Department willing to move ahead. Their agency is Agency 096. They were scheduled for a later day, at the end of the day, and just to be efficient use of time, they've agreed to present, and they do have several exception requests to visit about. I believe there's also a forthcoming handout, obviously, and we'll be handing that out in the next few minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hibbert, for being willing to do this.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Kevin Hibbert. I'm the Director of the Wyoming State Budget Department Grants Management Office. We're pleased to fill in a schedule for you today. And when Don Richards asked if we would do that, I said we'd be in trouble if the State Budget Department couldn't present this budget. So, Mr. Chairman, we will be brief to some extent, but we will engage in more detail on certain topics. But before we go into that, I just wanted to talk to you about the State Budget Department and the fact that there's a lot of things that go on that you're completely unaware of that we do for the state of Wyoming. And they're very important things. One of them, the cash management, the flow of money back and forth between the federal government and the interest if we have the money in our hands versus if they have it in their hands. Very complicated task, but we do the cash management. We are also, after the Alvarez and Marcel study, the efficiency study, Governor Gordon assigned the State Budget Department the Efficiency Office, and there's many, many efficiencies out there that we do. I'm just going to point out two of them really quick. 50 million, yes, $50 million was the result of the work that the State Budget Department did on cash flow with the Treasurer's Office for the money that was forwarded to the state of Wyoming for ARPA. Remember, we got the $1 billion up front. We had to cash flow that. Why is that important? Because some investments you get, well, typically you get better returns on long-term investments, but you have to have the cash liquidity when it's time to make the payments. So we collaborated with the State Treasurer's Office, and through the period of time, we have collected just almost $50 million, but it'll be $50 million here really soon. So that's one of the examples. When we get into the budget, I will point out a strategic sourcing event that took place here recently. What do we mean by strategic sourcing? For example, ETS, we have a contract. We use NASPO, National Purchasing Officers, to help us with pricing, but we do economies of scale. What does that mean? Well, I have a purchase order contract. A purchase order contract is we say to the vendor, we're going to buy 1,000 of these units, but you need a bid predicated on a larger sum of those events. Tires would be an example. Radios would be an example. And I'll show you another example here later on, but certainly computers are strategic sourcing. We do the statewide cost allocation, and I will go into detail on an exception request on the development of the statewide cost allocation and all the relationships that we have with the Federal Office of Health and Human Services. Very complicated task, but I will go into detail when that comes up. Also, the State Budget Department, we did CARES in concert with the State Auditor's Office, and we have that in a lockbox, the full audit, we heard that, prepared. So if they want to have a review of the state of Wyoming, we'll be happy to oblige. And we are in the process of making sure that that happens with ARPA as well. So when we're finished with ARPA on December 31st of 2026, we will have the audit documents so that we can make sure that when we're asked, we can represent the decisions of the state of Wyoming. We are very proud of the work that we did with ARPA. We led the nation, and you can go out on the State Budget Department's website and you can see the Power BI. Remember, we're a G5 outfit. We use Power BI on our Microsoft products. But when you think about that, we are very proud of the fact that we were in there early and we had everything that was necessary. And you heard me, and I won't repeat myself, about the conversation that I had with the Inspector General's office at 8 o'clock one evening about a challenge that we had on our spending of ARPA, and we met that in minutes, which was pretty cool. So we will have a conversation tomorrow with the director of ETS about TRP. Again, we're also proud of that. We had a mission that was given to us in an interim topic to go and build a TRP book to give you inventory, to give you numbers so that we can make a decision. We're most of the way there. I'll ask you tomorrow to make a final decision on how we can really be efficient with that, but I won't go into any further detail without my partner at ETS on that conversation. So that's basically just the state of the agency, Mr. Chairman. If you'd like to have any questions now before we go into the budget document, we'd be happy to do that.
Any questions? Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to introduce Christine Eminger. She's our Grants Management Administrator, and she'll pick up our priority number 1.
Thank you, Director. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Joint Appropriation Committee. I would like to navigate you to page number 25 to present our first priority exception request for the State Budget Department, the Wyoming Grants Management Office. Very quickly, I will give an outline, and then I do believe that LSO staff will be able to navigate through our website real quickly. I'll discuss the brief overview of how we got here, how we came to be, who we serve, how to get in contact with us, and what our long-term vision is. My director mentioned the 2018 efficiency study that had been commissioned. It actually sunsetted June of 2020. There are still a few members that are in legislature that are still here to this day. One thing in the State Budget Department is that we really like efficiency. We don't want to recreate the wheel. We would like to simply maintenance it and make it spin a little bit faster and fine tune it. And one of the things that we did is we pulled out the efficiency study report, which emphasized that our state sometimes is exposed to levels of risk when we have local governments managing federal dollars. The simple fact is that if you manage a federal dollar, you also may be at risk of misspending it. And when you're at risk of misspending it, then you have to pay it back, and then you kind of get on their blacklist, the federal government's blacklist. So we took all of the recommendations from there and we pushed them through the Grants Management Office when we received $500,000 of appropriated general funds to the State Budget Department through the 25-26 budget session. Through that, we acted quickly. We knew that we had to make up for lost time, because when the Efficiency Commission sunsetted, that was actually June 2020. And if you travel back in time, that's when the pandemic started. And then that's when we received the CARES Act dollars, which was the first $1.25 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
You're referring to the efficiency study, just for everybody's perspective. Is this also known as the Alvarez and Marcel report of that year?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So we received about $1.25 billion from the CARES Act. Our good state auditor, she was able to report to the United States Treasury on that. And then we got another huge, large sum of money through ARPA. That was another $1 billion. And it was a single point in time where we had one-time available dollars available to local governments. And what happened through that is something that we continue to see with all of our other state-funded programs, like through the Water Development Office. We saw a very large oversubscription to the appropriated use of funds. And whenever I say a very large oversubscription, in Senate File 66, one of the first ARPA bills, we only appropriated $50 million for water sewer infrastructure. The Office of State Lands and Investments received more than $300 million worth of applications. That's 6 times the amount that we even had available and was appropriated to the executive branch for ARPA. So we see this, though. We see this continued oversubscription to state program dollars. Water Development Office, the MRG Fund, which is one of our favorites among local government staff. But there's an oversubscription. And what people don't realize is that there are many more available funding sources out there. Are they guaranteed? Not necessarily. Can we help create and support you in an eligible and competitive application process so you can get your foot in the door and you can fund maybe a water sewer project or a local transportation project and then be able to use your budget money for something else that you would like to at the local government level? Yes, that is something that we can do to help. So that is how we got started. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I apologize for doing this again. You just mentioned, water projects, local projects. Many times within the purview of this committee, we appropriate funds to the MRG, the Mineral Royalty Grant Fund, which is a state program. I'm just curious if this office is taking in those state opportunities into account at the same time that you're telling local governments about the federal opportunities.
Mr. Chairman, yes, we do. Right after we got started on our office and we started this journey, one of the first things that we did was we said there is a lack of identification and making sure that people know that there are funding opportunities out there. They are buried sometimes on state websites, but they're also buried on federal government websites as well. So what we did is we created what we call the Wyoming Grants Connect Hub. That was the first service. It was the first project. It was our #1 goal. Make local governments and Wyoming entities aware of what is out there. When they only think, oh, I can only apply to the Office of State Lands and Investments and they have the state revolving fund and it's clean water and it's drinking water and I can apply to MRG. That's it. But what they don't realize is the horizon, because there might be 22 other available funding opportunities out there that they could apply to, and it might be a little bit easier. And then they might actually have another water sewer project that could be funded at state lands and investments through another means. And it is reducing that burden and helping prioritize more projects at the local government level. The LSO staff has brought up the Wyoming Grants Connect Hub. It is facilitated through Power BI. A quick caveat item, we used Power BI to facilitate the transparency and the expenditure of ARPA dollars for the state of Wyoming, and that is the tool that we utilized to help respond to the Inspector General of the United States Treasury's question. There are more than 400 opportunities out on that database. We do this in phases. So phase one was, hey, what is out there for IIJA funds? Because at the time, those dollars have a shelf life. If we can apply to them and get money on the ground, excellent. If we have to move on and select a new opportunity, great. Phase number two of the tool was the incorporation of all of our state-funded opportunities. And what's really great is that since we're housed in the state budget department and we watch all of these testimonies and we watch all of your action on the floor when it comes to the budget bill, we are actually able to, in real time, say, oh, hey, let's flag that. That sounds like it will be an available program or funding opportunity to local governments, and we can work with that state department to help push out the availability of those dollars. And what's better about that is that we can help construct eligible applications so when they do get to a state department, those state department staff aren't burdened by all of the review process and having to go back to an applicant and ask for financial statements, or hey, why did you not provide this data metric? Why did you not speak to the population of your community or what they are undergoing at this time? Phase three is the inclusion of all other funding opportunities. We have a great team of federal partners who really like to tell us about what's coming down the pipeline for Wyoming communities, more specifically coal-impacted communities as well. And what we do is they say, hey, there's going to be an available program out there. We include it on our dashboard. We also go out to federal department websites and we research and we look for those buried opportunities and we display them on that Grants Connect Hub. It is Wyoming specific. You're not going to find something for the state of Alaska or New Mexico or even Montana. It's for Wyoming entities only. The fourth phase is the inclusion of everything else and maintenancing it. So foundational opportunities, little funding opportunities that are made available by like AAA and nationwide insurance. It's $5,000 or $10,000, but it might be able to be used as match for a federal grant program or a one-time project that they need to get pushed out on the ground. And then we, as we progress through this new federal administration, we have also included the One Big Beautiful Bill and the opportunities that have been presented through that. I will pause there, Mr. Chairman.
Is that passion? I like that. Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I have to comment on what you just said about coal communities, because my coal community did receive a little over $3.5 million grant from the Biden administration. I disagree with this grant because it was to convert our coal communities to something else, which I fundamentally disagree with the move away from coal. It's a good resource, but I'm hopeful with the new administration and their energy dominance fund that there will be lots more opportunities for us. So I'm encouraged that you're digging in. Not all these grants are really what I would consider good for Wyoming, but it's important that you find them and make them available. So I do appreciate that. Wouldn't you agree?
Mr. Chairman, we would certainly agree. And Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right. We have a process of saying this grant does not fit the culture of Wyoming. So all of that is taken into consideration. But also I want to point out is that you just see online how simple it is for us to cast the net. That was the number one priority that we had on consultant selection. We wanted to make sure they were casting it. Now, when we get into the further conversation about our budget, you'll see some tools that we are using to cast that net. But that is available just to go in and ask questions on. But if you have an event and you want to have a technical service request, for example, coal, we did this for the Craig, we did a technical service request about all the moving parts on coal, including what's going on in Oakland, et cetera. But that's, last I heard, was 606 individual technical service requests, which include ROI calculations, who's going to benefit, how can we dovetail one community with another community, et cetera. So I'll let Christine go into that aspect of the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Follow up, and Mr. Hibbert, you and I have discussed this, the value of cost-benefit analysis when we go into these grants. I'm looking at the request for the 2 positions, and I'm wondering, are these positions that are economists, for instance, where we can really dig into the ROI that you just mentioned, or are these something else? And if they're not, do you already have those resources in your office? And are we able to do a deep dive when a community thinks, hey, this is more money, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not? Are we doing that kind of work?
Mr. Chairman, the number one thing is that when you do the calculus behind compensating these 2 positions that we're talking about, Wyoming is so far out in front of the nation on what we are doing with the Grants Management Office. It's incredible. So it's really tough to do a comparator, but HR did do the comparators, and this position, these 2 positions will be a 33% increase over the existing staff. Let me explain that. And I want to put it just black and white that that's what it is. How did we do this? Well, we have AWAC positions. For example, we have one in Kansas, and we have the Tiger team. Very limited amount of time that this individual helps us with, but he's a savant when it comes to computer. We didn't hire somebody and put them in place to do grants management. We took the cream of the crop in this budget department and we assigned them to grants management, and we backfilled all the other responsibilities that this department has with the AWAC positioning. So let me say that again. There was no way that we could have hired people and trained them up and delivered to the extent that we could. We took our cream of the crop and assigned them to that job task. Now, this is unsustainable. My level of effort on this, I can't continue to do that without these 2 positions. The 2 positions that are in here, they actually did their own budgets. They have their own budgets that you'll see them come in here when you see the OSLI or the Business Council, you'll see them sitting back there. They actually did their own budget. That's unsustainable. So what we've done is we've created the Grants Management Office. We've shown you that we have an ROI, 18-to-1 ROI. And let me put a caveat on that. 20% of our effort is to attract the grant and get that money coming into the borders of Wyoming. The other 80% of our effort is associated with managing the grant. Nobody better in Wyoming than the team that we put together with the state of Wyoming people, with the federal government, with the state budget department. There's nobody better in helping us manage these grants. That's where the risk is. So if we have an 18-to-1 return on cash, on grants that we've attracted in, what's the value of the 80% that we're helping local governments? And by the way, they ask us, we help. We don't tell them they're here. And there's not a corner inside the state of Wyoming that we haven't traveled to do exactly that. We go to them and we help. The tribes, for example. So I can go on all day about that, but I just want to be black and white that in order for us to continue this great effort and get this huge ROI, we're going to need 2 positions and we're going to have to fairly compensate them.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Weiss.
Kind of a statement, I'll have to ask a question, Dan. I thank you incredibly for this. This is something that's been deeply needed clear across the state. I think it's probably one of the best efforts of time and money that can possibly be made to help particularly our small communities like the ones I'm from. And I don't have much of a question, but I have a statement. I think we need to really double down on our support of what you do. It actually lessens the impacts and the need for money from the state. You guys have figured out how to bring money in from other sources and other places and to leverage it to an incredible degree. And my question is, what do we need to do to double down and make your efforts better? Because I do think your statement was correct. You're the leading state in the nation on this.
We are.
And how do we double down on it and actually do it? Because as far as ROI, this probably gives us a higher return on any spending we have almost across state government and helps our towns and counties become more effective, along with individuals. And, you know, that's one place you cross the deal is really good. This is one place that you can have the state help you, that we constitutionally can allow you to reach out and help us. So let us know what we can do, lay it out for us, what more we can do to make it even more effective and better. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the way that we've established this is we have a force multiplier. Force multiplier. What do I mean by that? Well, the state of Wyoming, all the assets that we have and all the financial position across the state of Wyoming, that's a force multiplier to help the local governments. We should be helping them. This vision was always to help the local governments. The other force multiplier is Haggerty. They are the research end. You ask a question, the 606 technical service requests, coal, water. You ask the question, we do a deep dive, we go all the way through the process, including the ROI. We also have, for the benefit of the 80% of the managing this, we have the largest accounting firm in the nation on tap for us. Their taxes, for example, there's benefits for us to be able to help the local governments when they're taking their tax filings. So this is huge, but our force multiplier is in line on page 27, the 901 contract services, $3.7 million. That's our force multiplier. So you have the two positions that we're asking for, you have the administrative costs, but the force multiplier is how we get there. Without that, we can't do the wonderful work that we're having. How do you administer to 105 counties or 23 counties, excuse me, and 95 cities? How do you do that with two people and a director? Well, you have a force multiplier. That's our consultant's effort. Thank you.
Other questions? I like what I'm hearing. Okay. No questions? Proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to segue into who we serve. So if you are a Wyoming entity, we have something called the Wyoming Grant Assistance Program. This is the meat and bones of our office. This is how we have received more than 600 technical assistance requests across our state. It is very, very simple, though. If you're a Wyoming entity and you are eligible to apply for a state, federal, private foundation opportunity, and you are in Wyoming and servicing Wyoming citizens, you're not just filing with the Secretary of State to get a little business filing and get a tax exemption or reduce taxes. No, we actually do a very vetted process with that, but that is who is eligible for our services, Wyoming entities. Our stakeholders, though, are Wyoming constituents. Whether it's a local government, water sewer project, transportation project, even nonprofit entities that are servicing some of our veterans here in the state with equine services. It also expands into maybe even killdeer wetlands outside of Green River as well. We service Wyoming constituents. That's who it is at the end of the day, because they are the beneficiaries of what we are helping local governments with. When it comes to the goals of our office, though, we're very, very simple. Like we said, we really like efficiency. We do not like recreating the wheel. One of the first goals is help communities understand and identify available funding opportunities that meet their priorities. You heard my director say we don't tell people what to do. We absolutely do not. The local governments know their priorities, and they know what needs to happen in their communities more than we do at the state. What we do, though, is we provide them with a list of available funding opportunities so that they can take those things into consideration. And yes, if they do need us to expand on, say, a particular opportunity to know what the benefits and the risks are, we can provide that research and we can hand it off to them so that they can make that decision themselves amongst their stakeholder groups. The second opportunity, though, the second goal of our office is that if a local government does wish to pursue a funding opportunity, that we step in with additional services and help them write and develop a competitive and eligible grant narrative. We have really great ideas. We have really great innovative projects here in Wyoming. We just need to know how to develop a competitive argument and good justification to beat out other local governments in the nation. And yes, they probably have really important projects, but we're winners here in Wyoming, and we want the money to service our public constituents when it comes to one-time projects. The third goal of our office, through all of those little services and all of those little tasks that are identified in goal number 2, we are trying to create a long-lasting framework. This office builds on itself. Every time we receive a request, or if we develop a resource that's particular to a technical assistance request, we have that in a database. So if we find ourselves receiving a similar request in the future, we already have that resource developed, and we are able to give them a more immediate response. It also provides us the opportunity to look in the rearview mirror. We are always reflecting on our services and where there are gaps and where local governments are experiencing gaps. One of the things, and I will point to an example, is that at the inception of our office, we received a lot of technical assistance requests. Hey, I have these 5 projects, can you help me with them? And when we ask them to prioritize those projects, we are met with the answer, well, they're all important. We need to get all of them done. Yes, but in the terms of the grant world and state funding and how your budget operates, you're only going to be able to pick 1 or 2 to move forward with at a given time. So what we developed at the Grants Management Office was a project prioritization tool to help local governments sort through their risks and challenges with certain projects and to find out which one is the best to move forward with and which one actually aligns with an available funding opportunity. So with that, that's a little bit of overview about the grant assistance program. That's what we provide to local governments. However, you heard my director speak about the other 80%, the management of the grant. There's this really great document. It's called 2 CFR 200. It's about 500 or 600 pages if you wanted to print it out. But that is what dictates what you can and cannot use a federal dollar on. And then it gets scoped down even more when the program is released. You may have to report key performance metrics, or you may have to collect additional reporting details to be able to facilitate your financial reporting. And do you actually have that money set up in your accounting system to track it and report how you need to? Those are some of the optics around the 80% of the grants management, and that's where we find ourselves, or local governments or entities might find themselves in a situation of, oh, I have some spilt milk. I'm not sure if I should have spent these $10 on purchasing some dry erase board items or expo markers. That is a serious thing that we actually get because people get so worried that they're misusing their funds, and they sometimes are afraid to ask us. But there's ways to remediate things. The 2 CFR 200 guidance, it does outline how you can take remedial action, or how you can clean something up, or how you can self-identify and present it in an audit and say, hey, I actually caught myself. Please don't ding me on this. I've developed this internal procedure to catch this the next time around if it were to happen. But that return, though, is close to 200 to 1. You heard we have 18.7 to 1 whenever we're trying to help local governments secure grant dollars. Our track record for post-award grants management services is a 200 to 1 return on investment. It is a really, really great opportunity, but as you heard, it is unsustainable, which is why on page 27, we are requesting 2 positions and some additional funds so that we can continue these efforts and we can build on this. We want to create a lasting framework, and we want to make sure that local governments are able to help manage their dollars. At the end of the day, this is federal fund financial management.
Questions? Yes, Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the presentation. How much are you using computer and AI back to your 500-page and all your federal rules to make it easier for compliance for everybody? Because I'm just looking through it, and I've know numbers of our small towns that just won't apply for a grant because they're terrified they are going to fall out of compliance. And do we have potential looking forward, and maybe it costs us some more, but to really streamline that effort for them to figure it out? Because from my end, I can tell you on us, we've looked on our operations to look at federal grants, and we've just stayed away from them because of the compliance rules. And we've actually been to your office and kind of flirted around the edges, but couldn't figure out how to do it. So if you could expound a little and say if you're doing it, or If you're not, what would it take to get where we could get to a deal that you could sit down and pull up something with some actual type stuff that says, what if? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, early this morning, I used AI to research the CFR 200 issue. It happens all the time. Our consultants are absolutely in that, the net that we cast, absolutely. But I do appreciate the comment that the local governments that have a person, might be the mayor and the chief financial officer and the treasurer wearing 3 hats. That's our mission, to help that local government, that's with those small staffs, so that they can be in a place where they can reach out and they can find somebody, the heavy hitters out there. So your little local government gets up against OMB or another federal agency, another cognizant, they pick up the phone, they're getting the heavy hitters. They're getting Clifton Larson Allen, they're getting Haggerty, they're getting Director Hibbert, they're getting Christine Immiger. That's who they have. And we have a track record that we can show you where they were just appreciative, major league appreciative of how we stepped in and helped them with that. One of the most fascinating things that I see, because each year we have the funding summit, I'm just going to share this story with you, because they keep coming back again and again. We had 300 participants, and you see them coming here. I witnessed a conversation where one person asked a question, and one of the people that were there in the previous year said, "Oh, I can show you how to do that," because they were here. Our mission is to put this expertise within the boundaries of Wyoming so that our communities can share with one another. They can be the heavy hitters. So thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I'm going to agree with both of your statements about the value of the 80% of your work where you're dealing with the enforcement, ensuring that we're following all the rules and guidelines. You had mentioned a 200% return on investment on this, or maybe it was a 200 to 1 return. And so I'd like to just drill down on that a little bit. I know even within my own county government, you know, we've had times with our resources that have been difficult to stay up on our federal grants. The good senator just mentioned even smaller communities. So how do you come up with that? And is there a way of us reporting to this committee in the future, you know, how we're doing, what kind of risks we mitigated, I guess, is really what I'm looking for. Is it possible to track that? Because that is 80% of your work. I consider it almost invaluable as well. But can we track it? Can we keep this committee informed so that, you know, should we make a decision to fund this, we can keep that funding going, we can understand the value of your work?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. We are actually very dedicated to transparency. If you go to our State Budget Department website, you will find all of our ARPA and capital project funds reports, as well as a transparency dashboard that I mentioned earlier today. We're doing and developing the same thing for the Grants Management Office using Power BI. It will be available on our State Budget Department website. The optics around the 200 to 1 return on investment is based on the $500,000 of appropriated general funds in the 25-26 budget session. We have helped entities, let me walk back. We use a formula because we can't just say, oh, we're helping you with $3 million. Okay, we're helping you with $3 million, but what is the portion of that $3 million to your entire operating budget? Because if you have a $100 million budget, you get a $3 million grant. Okay, it's like some pocket change for you in that organization. However, if you have an operational budget of only, say, $1 million and you are going to take on a $3 million grant, that is a huge burden, and that requires a higher risk level and higher ratio in our metrics to be able to say, oh, there is true value there, and we need to incorporate that. So we have assisted through the formula that we have built around $100 million worth of management of both federal and regular operational funds, and that is how that 200 to 1 return on investment metric is tracked.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, just to wrap this up, and we'll move into the other exception requests, is 2 years ago, I made a promise to the Joint Appropriations Committee. If I couldn't come back in 2 years and represent the ROI, I would end this program myself. Obviously, we have an ROI, and we'd like to continue this program. So, Mr. Chairman, if we go back to our exception priority table, the next one, naturally, the grants management office, 2 employees will have TRP, that's the 1A. I'll turn this over to Administrator Ketchum to talk about the IBAR's maintenance and hosting.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Jess Ketchum. I'm the Budget Administrator for the State Budget Department. If you please turn to page 13, I'll go over priorities number 2 and priority number 3. I'm sure mine won't be as passionate. This is dealing with maintenance and hosting of IBARs, but I always seem to follow these types of presentations. All right. First of all, I'll give a little synopsis. IBARs is the Internet Budget and Reporting System. That's what we use for the State Budget Department. LSO uses it, as well as A&I Accounting. It's a SaaS solution system, or a software as a service system, which means we pay a subscription fee for a cloud-based system, and the provider is responsible for all the hardware, hosting, and security upgrades. So the state's not responsible for any of this. It stays and lives with the vendor. And as Director Hibbard often says, that gives us one throat to choke if something goes wrong. So, so if we go to priority number 2, we're asking for $15,120 for the biennium to cover the maintenance increase of IBARs. And with this, you have the new builds, the maintenance of the databases, et cetera. There are no questions on this, Mr. Chairman. I'll go to priority number 3.
Please do.
Priority number 3 is our hosting increase. This is what it is. We get new servers. They provide all that information. TrackZilla, which we use for our complaints or trying to figure out information that we need to work within IBARs. There's a lot within the explanation of the request, but it's just mainly the hosting of IBARs. So if there are no further questions, I'll just end there with.
Any questions? No questions. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, IBARs is very, very inexpensive when you compare software packages. The total all-in cost for both is $357,560. Mr. Chairman, the next priority is on page 15, and this is the statewide cost allocation automation. This is actually another example of efficiency initiative that we took upon. There should be a handout. If the handout hasn't come, it will, and it just simply shows you, thank you, Representative Sherwood, what's taken place since I have been in this position. So go back to 2014. We collected $12.2 million in statewide cost allocation. That means the federal government, we billed them for our administrative costs. We billed the special revenue agencies for our administrative costs. It's the burden of the state auditor's office, the budget department, risk management, the warehouse that we have for storage of documents, all those things associated with it. We got really good at this. And last year, we collected $24.9 million. So the ROI is there. However, I spend an amazing amount of time on this. We have meetings every Tuesday and Thursday, to give you an example, for an hour, all year long to go through this process. What I've seen now is that I think that we can automate this to where we have the ability to go to a system where it goes out, reaches out. You've seen it, where they do a question on Google or Microsoft, fill this out to the expectation of what we want, or it fails in absolute specificity. And then that is rolled up, and then that goes into our formula, our method. 101 of statewide cost allocation is first the source, the administrative cost, the budget department, State Auditor's Office. Then the next thing is the method. Well, what formula do you use? And the Federal Office of Health and Human Services has to approve that formula. So if it's computers, it's for email, it's the number of email addresses that you have to total. That is the clearance pattern. And the target would be the agency that pays, whether it's the federal government through an indirect cost allocation, or if it's with a special revenue agency like WIDOT or the Game and Fish that'll pay for that. It's very, very, very complicated. And one of the most complicating factors, this is funds distribution. Funds distribution is who pays and how much. What federal share is allocable, what state share is allocable. So at any rate, what we'd like to be able to do is have this system automated from the beginning to the end. And what's the ROI? You say, I can get to 24.9 million. We can double that by really getting scientific about this and really going after it. And truly, my mission on this has always been, make sure the federal government is paying their fair share. They want to give us the grant. They want to influence our decision-making about how they'd like to have us craft our decision-making, because they'll prioritize in their world how they want to fund things, and then they'll retract funding. But what I want to make sure that happens is when all of this comes to rest, we have cleared our administrative costs to the extent that's allowable and legal and a positive relationship with the Federal Office of Health and Human Services. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll answer any questions on that priority.
Any questions? No questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll do the next one too. I know Christine was prepared for this, but this is a strategic sourcing. This is natural gas intelligence. This is a Craig event that we have to get pricing on a weekly basis. It can help us with our revenue estimating. So the real quick thing about this is strategic sourcing means we've got an agency or we've got a client out there that's giving, has contracts with 5 or 6 different entities inside of the state of Wyoming. What we do is we close in on them. We say, okay, we're going to have one entity that you're going to work with, and then what you'll do is we'll then, maybe we have a SaaS system, and then we make that allocation. Well, we discovered in this, the NGI world, that we did in fact have the University of Wyoming, we had economic analysis, we have LSO, we have multiple players involved paying individually on these contracts. We said, nope, we're going to pull these together, and then we have to have somebody that has to have a home. Pick the home. We chose to have the State Budget Department to be the home of NGI for strategic sourcing, and it's going to be $41,000. It'll be allocated to all those partners. We're going to recover the cost with the exception of the State Budget Department. Oh, by the way, State Budget Department, that's recovered through the statewide cost allocation, so we will recover these costs. But now what we had is the Department of Revenue came on, and it's free. There's no seat count now. We can bring all the players that we want in that want to have access to this information, and it is free from this point on. So basically all we're doing is that the State Budget Department is the home for NGI. Any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll hammer this too. FFIS, Federal Funds Information System. Really good example. We were in the throes of a government closure. And in my office, I'm sitting there trying to create advice for the governor's office about what risks that we have with each agency, that they have rule sets, who's going to pay, who's going to continue to be open, all this kind of stuff. FFIS had a very clean, very clear document. I shared it with Director Luthi, and he shared it with the policy people so that we were comfortable with our decision about we're just going to underreact, and we did. And in fact, in October 1st, we were at $57 million in the federal fund because we pay first and then we reimburse. We're always in the red on the Fed fund. And at the close of the shutdown, we were 61 million. We did our job through that whole process. Now, one of the things was the SNAP, the $2.4 million. We had to go out and help on the SNAP. So we did use the welfare emergency for SNAP for the tune of $2.4 million. So, Mr. Chairman, that's Federal Funds Information System. Everybody uses it. LSO uses it. Again, we're the home that it resides for us. So please, and it really helps us for Grants Management Office. We couldn't do Grants Management without it. Mr. Chairman, the last one on page 20, this is a zero fund request. This is the one that we talked about extending the AWACS through December 31st, 2026. You'll see the Governor's Office, State Budget Department, Office of State Lands and Investment, Department of Health, workforce services. Rather than having an individual request to extend those AWACs, we're just asking for a Section 300 or whatever decision that you make to extend those AWACs to all those, and you only see us asking for it rather than hearing this narrative several more times.
Any questions? Do you have a question? Okay. Any questions on this? Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Mr. Hibbert, how many employees, AWAC employees, does this cover in this extension that you're presenting here?
I think there's like 6, I'm guessing, but we have, the list is on there. The budget department, we currently have 3 AWAC positions, and 2 of them are filled. One's not in Wyoming, telecommutes. That's the Savant in Kansas. He actually worked for me when I was at YDOT, and we implemented PeopleSoft Oracle. The guy is just amazing. The other one is we have a person that works 20 hours a week that worked for the budget department for years and years and years. He's an absolute awesome asset. So he's an AWAC. And I think you got one in the Department of Health, you got one in the governor's office, you got one at Workforce Services.
And Mr. Chairman, just a clarification, we're only asking for the extension through December 31 of 2026, so it's just that first 6 months of the biennium, so we can use up those ARPA dollars.
Right, and it's the funding for ARPA lasts that long too, so we're not asking for any money. We're just asking for us to keep those. And I've been thinking about, there's a caveat of maybe Congress goes longer. I doubt that they will. I think they want to revert these funds for their own balancing of the budget. But if necessary, I will fund out of my budget what's necessary for us to plant the audit information, because when we're done with this, we want to warehouse this for whomever wants to come around the corner and have questions on it. We did it with CARES, and we're completely capable of doing this with ARPA.
Well, I wish you were more excited about it, but I want to compliment you on your team. And then rehash for me what your total ask is.
So, Mr. Chairman, our total exception request that was recommended by the governor is $5,142,795. That can be found on page 10. The total department ask, department-wide, the department table would be $7,983,935. That's on page 3.
Okay, thank you. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Comment and a question. There's one who was around when this group came out on their own and promises were made, and I too remember the promises that were made, and they've delivered on every one. And more importantly, and we talk about a lot around, and especially in this committee, but the challenges that we have with government. This is one of those cases where, especially through ARPA, through what we went through in the pandemic, and how those monies flooded in here and then came out. And you look at state after state out there right now, the money is there's lawsuits being filed. There's a lot of court cases. There's a lot of money being having to be refunded. Money's going back into the business community because it was misallocated or misappropriated. And we have, virtually none of that here. It was run, this is a model for the whole country. And so it really is, I think this is an example of what can be done in when you set out a vision and then go for a specific goal and achieve it. So I do appreciate it too. But I do have a question. Even though they were very small requests about IBARs. And I was part of a committee back here a year or two ago about, I was talking about moving away from IBARs. So I wanted just to ask, where do you all see it? Where do you see it? I mean, like I said, I know those asks are just very small, minor asks for updates and whatever, but where do you see what's going with IBARs?
Mr. Chairman, the State Budget Department is not asking to replace IBARs. We're satisfied with the tool. I can go on great levels of detail about some of the functionality that's completely invisible to this committee about what we get out of IBARs. That's why we're asking for you to fund the maintenance of IBARs for the upcoming biennium. There is no intent on our part to replace.
Any other questions? Okay, you want to wrap it up? Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, we couldn't have done this without the team in Wyoming. The state auditor's office, the AG's office with ARPA, all those relationships, the governor's office, our consultants that are heavy hitters. We can't sit here and just say that we were the pivotal reason why we were successful. We were successful because we have a wonderful team in Wyoming, all striving to do the right thing together. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Richards, anything before we wrap up for lunch?
Mr. Chairman, we do have 15 minutes. We have one more agency that's been called and.
Who is that?
It's the Office of Administrative Hearings. They have
Yes.
2 exception requests, and I think one relates to TRP, the
Please
other
come
one
up.
is software.
Welcome. How are you? Yes, Don.
Mr. Chairman, just for the committee's knowledge, this is agency number 270, and it was previously scheduled for 4:30 today, so we'll likely adjourn a little early by doing this.
Thank you for being flexible. Appreciate it. You can just introduce yourselves and take it away.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chairman Bear. So I'm J.C. Demers from the Wyoming Office of Administrative Hearings. With me is Ms. Marilyn Asher, who's our office manager, but also our fiscal person, and we're a small office, so she has to wear many hats, and fiscal person is one of them. The Office of Administrative Hearings was started in 1987, essentially to do workers' compensation cases and to take a load off the district courts. Later on, driver's licenses were added to our office, and then general agency administrative cases were also added. So we do primarily workers' compensation, driver's licenses, licensing boards, and then we also do work for Wyoming Department of Workforce Services Labor Standards, which includes wage cases and discrimination cases. And those cases are unique in the sense that they don't generally involve a state agency. It's just 2 litigants opposed to each other. Our office consists of, we're staffed for 12 people. Currently, we have 11 people. And as was indicated, our exception requests are small. They're found on page 15 of our budget report. One of them is for Grammarly licenses and Dragon professional license renewal. Grammarly licenses software that allows editing of our documents, and we are a document-intensive agency. And then Dragon allows dictation to text for people whose fingers don't fly over the keyboard. And we have 3 of those. And then our other exception request is simply for our Microsoft Office subscription, and then for a Chrome box, which is necessary to keep our hearing office operating in terms of remote hearings. The total on those is $8,636 for the one, and $6,327 for the other. And in terms of certainly Grammarly and as well as the Dragon software, those do increase our efficiency substantially. And it's a small investment for the amount of efficiency increase that we get from them. With that, are there any questions?
Are there any questions? Yes. Yes, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here and being flexible with our schedule today. By the way, your Christmas puppy dog sweater is very cute. Thanks for bringing some color. My question is specific to you have 1 opening, so 12 staff people, 1 opening right now. In our vacancy report, there's a note that just says the director is not willing or wanting to fill this position at this time. So I guess I'm just looking for more explanation on that decision to have this position sort of held open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood. So our last vacancy, it's a staff position, it's a legal assistant position. It was filled, well, October 3rd, one of our legal assistants left. But we have been, generally managing with 11 people. I guess, one of the things that we can't control is the amount of cases that we have. Well, we can control them to some extent because the statute allows us to turn away agencies that aren't required to have their hearings heard before the Office of Administrative Hearings. We haven't done that, and I never want to have to do that. We always want to be able to handle the cases of any agency that asks us. So I guess the position would give us some flexibility, but to answer your question, at the time, right now, we're able to handle the workload with what we have. So does that mean that I wouldn't want to fill it in a few months? Not necessarily, but just to be very candid about it, at the moment, I think that we can handle the workload with the current staff. Thank you.
So you can do with what you have?
We can.
Wow.
Well,
That's great.
I'm blessed to have a very dedicated office, and I mean, people work really hard.
No, I appreciate
to
your
make that
candor.
happen.
Thank you. Other questions? Anyone else? So for the benefit of the public who's watching, what's your total ask? What's your total budget?
Sure. It is $4,688,705.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yep. Mr. Richards, anything else?
No, thank you for the juggling of.
No, thank you.
agencies.
Appreciate it. With that, members, we will break for lunch and come back at 1 o'clock.